Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people. But not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always...
Oh, Nika Pierce. Yes, I believe I met her when I visited that mental hospital back east. That's one of the causes I'm most passionate about. Women with mental health issues.
Eddie of Edward's Truth.
And today we are talking about Chucky, Season 2. Are we going to do... Yay! Should we just do the entire episode as Chucky and Tiffany? How long do you think we can last? It's not going to work. It's not because we're going to be too focused.
I'm exhausted just thinking about the prospect. We'll get there in
It'll
time,
be nuggets,
but not tonight. Not tonight. There's too much to talk about.
Little nuggets. Is there?
Yeah, here and there.
Little.
It'll happen.
Yeah, just a little slip.
Just a little slip.
There we go. I'll leave the tiff for you. But
thank you.
Yes, Chucky Season 2. This premiered October 5th, 2023. 8 episodes long on the SyFy.
Wait, 2022.
What year are we?
We're in 2023 now. October hasn't happened yet.
Oops. Oopsies. Hi. Welcome to the Cherry Picker. Yes, October 5th. 2022 was the premiere. Yes. 8 episodes long. We already covered season 1 on probably this time last year. It was one of our earlier episodes.
Around that time, yeah.
So, we had a lot of fun with that, and we obviously just did Child's Play and Child's Play 2. So we're slowly making our way through the franchise. Because this I've said before, and I know that you echo my sentiments, is that this is one of my favorite horror franchises.
Yeah, totally.
Yours as well. So yeah, we love Chucky, we love Child's Play. But anyway, just in the spirit of tradition, I now read these intros in the Chucky voice, and Edward has so graciously written one up for me at the very last minute here. So,
right, yeah. like I do.
me. Here we go. So, since my ingenious plan to invade the children's hospitals of America was foiled by that limp dick Andy Barkley and those meddling asshole kids, I've now assumed a few new identities for a multi-pronged revenge attack on all the pricks I hold responsible, including that betraying bitch ex-wife of mine, Tiff. I go through brainwashing, several more deaths, even an exorcism on season 2 of my hit series, Chucky.
That's fun.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So how we're gonna do this is we're gonna go through each episode, because I think like last season we were kind of all over the place, and it's just so much easier to go through one by one, because I don't know Edward, what is your overall impressions of season 2?
I have nothing but a gut reaction, because when we did our season 1 discussion, I got to see it twice. And I watched season 1 again prior to watching season 2, just so things could be fresh in my head. But I only watched season 2 all the way through once with my Blu-ray that I bought. So I haven't had time to really process. All I can say is I had the time of my life. So overall, that's where I'm coming from. What about you?
Had the time of my
That,
you
that
do a
song is
duet
forever
as
ruined
Chucky
for
and
me
Tiffany?
too. Okay, right.
Never felt this way.
I can just
and
imagine.
you owe it all to me.
I'm just imagining like Chucky and Tiffany, but doing like the dance, or just like when she leaps into his arms. But it wouldn't be doll
As
Tiffany.
dolls?
It would be no. It would be like human Tiffany.
Jennifer Tilly. Jennifer
Just
Tilly.
Chucky
Tiffany
standing
leaping
there with his hands. Don Mancini, just make it happen. Make it happen. Even if it's just the dolls, just do that too. But I did not have the time of my life. Sadly, I watched this when it aired.
Okay.
And I watched it again because I bought the Blu-ray, and I felt like a lot of the magic that was there in the first season was kind of missing. It seemed to like the season itself, if I could sum it up, felt like it was sort of made up as they went along, because there's all these start-stop plot devices that they just come in, and they don't really have any purpose beyond just kind of randomly showing up. But it just feels like it's constantly shifting. There's just like they develop these things that seem like they're going to be important, and then they're just thrown away. And it did that for really like the first like into the 7th episode, I'd say. Whereas like season 1, it felt like it was there was an arc that was building, and there was a payoff in the last episode. I felt like everything that I had watched in 8 episodes came to a head in the finale, and it was satisfying. And here, I really liked the last 2 episodes. I think that they were the strongest ones, but it's like the road there just felt kind of like a roller coaster, and not in like the good way. It was just sort of like would go up, or I guess like down is like the good thing, and then it would be like, okay, but now we're gonna like slowly like not a roller coaster, but just like the one part at the beginning of the roller coaster, but without any of the adrenaline.
I think it was definitely a less organized season. It did feel, for the most part, riotous and chaotic, but that worked for me. I don't know if it'll work as well on subsequent viewings, but I don't know. I just kind of, it got to a point where I was no longer taking notes and punctuating with periods. I was punctuating with multiple question marks and multiple exclamation marks. And well, we'll get there. But I did have, if we want to open up episode 1, I did want to ask you, did you feel like you got your wish when Andy drove off into Hackensack Gorge at the top of episode 1?
Okay. Well, first of all, episode 1 is called Halloween 2.
Yes, it is.
Hackensack Gorge, is that a reference? Like, did the gorge appear earlier? I'm just asking because you specifically bring it up.
No, I mean it was labeled, like it was named Hackensack Gorge,
Yeah.
like he knew he was going to drive into it, but I don't think it ever figured into anything prior to this. I don't even know if it really exists.
Yeah. Well, does Hackensack actually exist?
Hackensack does. You asked me that.
Oh, did
before,
I?
I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, you thought they made up.
Yeah.
When I think it was when they were talking about Hack and Slash, and you were just kind of like, because I thought they made up that place, Hackensack. I'm like, no, Hackensack is an actual city in New Jersey. Yeah.
I feel terrible for people who live there, and it's just like now we're. I mean, actually, that might be good because it's just like I live in Hackensack, the place in Chucky, but this is.
I doubt anybody's saying that. But go on.
The opening of this episode and season overall was probably like the first disappointment of just like a series of disappointments, because it was like taking the cliffhanger from season 1, and it was discarding it in the most like uneventful, non-conclusive way as this series has kind of done, because we're introduced to Tiffany, not the person, the doll. And I was just like, oh wow, this is really cool. Like we're development, we're like getting somewhere, and it's like it opens up and she's dealt with immediately. You know, when she gets her head blown off of the rest of the doll body.
Sure.
And then like Andy going over the edge. And of course, like I knew that he wasn't dead because I'm not new to Child's Play or Chucky. So it felt like the whole setup was just sort of like, it was just given a hand job and it just didn't finish. What's the, I've heard you use that analogy before. It's like, we're just gonna start. I think it was in, we haven't talked about the movie. I think it was just off Potter. You might've brought it up in terms of The Omen 3. Or just like the way that it ended.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like, yeah, something like that. Like, it doesn't finish you off.
Yeah.
It jerks you for, what is it? How long is that movie? What, 90 minutes, 2 hours? I don't know. And then for like the last 10 minutes, it just kind of like, hands off.
Yeah. So in this case, it just like, it felt like that by the end of season 1, it was just like, hey, we're introducing doll Tiffany. We're going on an adventure with Andy. Andy is now a major player in the show after we only got snippets of him in season 1. And then he came into it in a big way towards the end. So I felt like this is going to be season 2. We're going to see where this plot develops. And then literally it's just like, we're going to drive off and like into Hackensack Gorge. So that was my take on it.
Okay. So yeah, see, as it opened, I was just, this is probably going to be the theme of our season 2 discussion is the course that it's taking, because it doesn't seem as like charted and as kind of like I guess intentional is a good word. It's kind of like an omnibus of madness that you may be coming from a place of like, and so I couldn't get on. Whereas with me, I was just having fun watching Tiffany wrangle these different Chuckies and watching them all kind of be attracted to her, but not understand why. I don't know. I was having a good time. And and when it ended with the crash, I was just kind of like, okay, so obviously this is going to go somewhere else. This can't be it. But if it is, weird. And also I now that I know, again, what's coming with season 2, I'm anxious to go through it again and just kind of see like what it's like re-experiencing all of the surprises, because most of it was, so much of this season was me just going, oh! And just being completely stunned that this decision was being made. So I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about the
I will say that I agree with you just in terms of like any sort of like Chucky instance of just like, the comedy is great. It's like, I love seeing the multiple Chuckies, and now it's just like some of them are like nuanced in a little way. Like you have the one who's completely bald and he's just like, oh, what did you say? Like, we're more virile, they're just shit like that. It's so like, interactions like that were fun. But then from there we get into the melodrama of the kids, and it's doing the thing. It's doing the thing where it's just like, hey, we got to create tension for the season, and so much of it felt so inorganic in a way of just like what they did with like the Jake and Devon Evans. I want to look at Devon Evans.
Yes.
I don't think that it's not unrealistic, but like throughout the season, it's just like this constant like back and forth of just like, like I think that it started in a really good place, but then it's like when he's being driven off by the Fosters and, Devon runs out onto the street and it's just like, Jake, wait, it's just like, fuck them. Just like, have their big moment, have their kiss. Yeah. Like it's almost like we started at the top, and now we're just going to spiral downward from there, because we're jumping ahead 6 months, and it's like Jake is like such a fucking fuckboy throughout this season of so many times. Because like right off the bat, here he is, and Devon is like expecting him in like minutes at his door. He's like preparing this gourmet meal, and he calls him. He's just like, hey, are you almost here? And he's like, no, I haven't gotten on the bus yet. And he's like, I don't think I can come because of this. And it's just like, literally, like, why are you, and he says, why are you telling me this now? That like the whole thing, it just feels like those things that like movies or TV does, because it's just like, we have to intentionally inject melodrama into these characters' lives. So let's just do it. Like, and they're like, we haven't seen each other. We haven't talked for 6 months. And I didn't like it. Like, I think that they built up these like really great relationships throughout the first season, and now rather than, you know, like they where it started was great, but then to do this jump 6 months backwards or in the future, it was sort of like now we're taking several steps backwards to like go through it in a different way. Like I'd rather it would have flowed better, and this is probably part of like the inconsistencies of this season. So I didn't like any of that.
So I'm not saying that Don Mancini baked that in, but I'm just saying there's something about that level of flakiness and that last minute kind of like, like if you're something that young people can do, and because I know I did it myself, is in order to keep from dealing with something, they will simply not deal until they have to. And I don't know, so it didn't feel inorganic to me. I didn't even think about that while I was watching the thing. I was just kind of like, oh no. I mean, again, like the course that it was taking, I was just on the ride. I was just following it. I didn't really have any big wait a minute moments with this season, actually, the way I did with season 1, where every now and then something would happen and I would go kind of like, and I you know, things that like still bother me, where I'm just kind of like, well, I'd still would have had this written a different way, but
So it sounds like that you
Let's
like
keep
this
going.
better than season 1.
I don't want to commit to it because I've only seen it
It's
once.
okay, you don't have
but...
to. We're not ranking anything. We're not ranking episodes.
No, we're not ranking
ranking
anything.
seasons.
Not yet.
I might give my based on like the movies and the seasons by the end of the episode, I might give my of the 4 that we've done a ranking of that. But yeah,
Okay.
if you don't want to commit, that's fine. What I mean by inorganic though, because I agree with you. I mean, like that is definitely something that I could see from. How old are these kids supposed to be at this point? 14, 15? Probably old. I mean, 16, I know that maybe.
I know that the actor who's playing Jake is now 16.
Yeah.
So mid-teens.
Also, I love how like authentic Don Mancini is. Sorry, side note. I love how authentic Don Mancini is with the casting. I mean, like everything, but like especially here, just like getting actual kids to play the roles that are age appropriate. But yeah, what I mean more so by inorganic is that I agree those are probably things that you would see in a typical teenager's life, a typical 15, 16-year-old's life, but these are not typical teenagers. These are teenagers who are bonded by the experience and the horrors that they went through a year earlier. So it just like to me, it didn't feel it just felt like purposefully late intro just to mix things up.
Okay. But we'll get more into that as it progresses.
But then we have Lexi, and I mean, I don't want to. I think that where she is, like that feels organic, just because like she's a character that's not really bolstered by other characters. She's kind of. I think we spoke about Lexi last season. She was our favorite. I don't know if we were doing the cherry picker at that time, but like retroactively, she would be the cherry picker for that episode.
Totally.
Because I feel that she's such a strong character on her own that she's not defined by other characters. So just like whereas like Jake and Devon are kind of, you know, lean on each other for just like how they navigate through the storyline. Lexi is like a singular entity. So I don't see anything inorganic about like where she's at and her addictions.
No.
But and we'll get more into this in like the later episodes, but I just like, I felt it was just kind of a slog seeing her kind of navigate through some of that.
Well, I'm not quite there yet. I did start to get there, but I'm not quite there yet. And as far as the way she's introduced, again, like the fact that like they were bonded by this trauma and now they've been separated by the state, basically by the government, you know, because they're minors and only one of them has parents who are still alive, or a parent who is still alive. So they're separated geographically, and when that happens at any point in your not quite a child anymore, but not quite an adult yet years, you're bound to kind of like shift your focus to adapt to whatever it is that's directly ahead of you. And some people are going to do that better than others. But I mean, yeah, and it broke my heart watching Lexi do coke. Who was she making out with? Dracula? Was that what he was dressed up as? I can't remember. Yeah,
I love the whole like you can go now.
Yeah. And seeing little Caroline again too, like that girl's energy, my God, she's so deliciously peculiar. I still haven't gotten enough, and based on, I won't go there yet, but just based on where we leave her this season,
I have
like she's only gonna get more
notes for the
peculiar.
finale for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, and then like next up in the episode, because we have the return. I don't know if we call it the return, but just the therapist, Dr. Mixter, and
Yes.
Okay, so you would know because you watched season 1 back to back with this.
Yeah.
Was it established in season 1 that she was in cahoots with Chucky? What
No,
or
not at
or
all.
we found that out here?
We found that out here.
Okay, because I
All
was
we
thinking
knew was
like,
that she was Bree's therapist. That's all we knew.
yes, because I remember seeing her in season 1 and just thinking like, there's something off about this character. Like I don't know if they kind of like established it through maybe like a look or a glance or just or some sort of cue, but it was more so just like the fact that she was always around and she was always kind of like she was always like the common denominator of everything. So I remember like when it was revealed that she was who she was, I didn't feel particularly shocked by it. I was just kind of like, it was almost like anticlimactic of just like, well, duh. But anyway, this is what she gives the Bell doll to the Cross family.
Wedding bell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love, finally, I can't remember if we found out her name in Bride of Chucky. I don't know. If we do, I don't remember it.
We're gonna get there eventually, but
Yeah.
it might have been. It might have been on like
but-
the box when she took it out of the.
Yeah, maybe. But just finding out Wedding Bell, I was just all I could think was, poor Caroline. Like, first she's visited by the ghost of Halloween past, and now this. And I also, one thing that did stun me, and I don't know if it like stunned me, like again, like I'm still kind of wrapping my brain around this, because I did kind of lie. Like I saw the first 3 episodes prior to like diving into the series again, but I streamed them off like the SyFy app, because you get 3 free episodes of any series if you create an account. So I got to stream those, and then I couldn't watch anymore because I don't have satellite. So I had to wait for the Blu-ray, and then I by the time the Blu-ray came around, I was like, well, of course I'm going to rewatch these episodes because I don't remember everything that happened. I really didn't either. I really appreciated the Strangers reference when Chucky called on Halloween night.
Oh, right.
At Devon,
Tamara.
and he says his Tamara home. Yeah. It's just like, oh my God, that's fun.
There was a lot of references throughout this season.
To a lot of.
I'll tell you my
things,
favorite one
absolutely.
when we get to it, but
Okay.
you might know what it is already. But those were all fun because it never feels. It's again like it's always references to things that are not Chucky. So it's not like, like Scream just referencing itself. It's like actual just like fun things. They're there for like fans of the horror genre. So I do appreciate that. But just in terms of like all the action that's happening in this section here, because like the movie gets very Lexi focused for a while. Because it's just like we almost forget
series,
about, or
the
movie,
episode.
the episode, because it's almost like we forget about Jake and Devon Evans, and we're just kind of like following her around, and it's just like that with the sister and everything. And I just felt like, okay, we're doing a lot of the same things over in the first season, because she like beats the shit out of the Bell doll, to be sure, and then there's like all the stuff with like Caroline having the knife under the covers and things like that. And I mean, it felt, again, like it was organic, but it felt redundant in a way to me, that I just like, I wanted the season to just like get moving.
Well, I guess I understand that from your vantage point, but there were also things that I was just kind of like, oh, look, there's Mayor Michelle. She never stops advertising. Like, I appreciated that she, even though she had been through everything that we've seen her go through, she's still the same terrible person. And I was actually kind of grateful for that, because Lexi's enough. I don't need all the terrible people to like turn over a new leaf and become great people. But I did get some interesting things from some people as the season progressed.
Yeah.
But why did I write this? I just wrote doll head POV, Lexi coaching Caroline. Doll head POV. Were they looking?
It might have maybe when
bells?
she was bashing the doll. I don't remember. Because they might have, maybe they were doing the same thing like when they killed Devon
with Chucky.
Sawa.
I actually see. I put a big plus next to that. Maybe just because I don't know. It's a little watch cry of the series, just kind of showing me like this is the way we do things here. I don't know. I was reassured by it. I mean. I won't do it every single time. You can't just do what you did before and I'm gonna, like clap my hands and go, yay, again. But I'm not, it's not beneath me either. Yeah. Like if you do it, if it's in a context that, is cushy and fun and that is like if it's enriching the experience, then I'll jump onto it. But okay. So then the shock we get to, because we find I didn't again. I think this was a really disorganized situation to move into, with Gary all of a sudden showing up on the doorstep of Lexi's house where Devon Evans and Jake are, and Caroline is there with Wedding Bell, and Gary's got Chucky, and Chucky has a bomb. And they're all waiting for Lexi to come down the stairs while she's doing drugs. And you're like thinking, don't come. And even Jake is like texting her, and I'm like, oh, she's out of her mind. It was the most, like, I can't defend it in the sense of like going like it's a wonderfully orchestrated piece of suspense. But it was so, this is actually kind of like a good way to, a good microcosm for the season for me. It was so kind of batshit and out of left field that I just leaned in wondering, where is this going? So when it went where it eventually went, where with Gary grabbing Chucky and running and Chucky exploding both of them in this kamikaze mission, which he had never done before, they comment on. Yeah. But for Gary to die, and then we see the three kids sitting on Dr. Mixter's couch being berated for being responsible for the death of Gary, little Gary, baby Robin, boy wonder. I was like, where the fuck are we? And but not in a bad way. Yeah. I couldn't make any sense out of it. So I just thought like, well, I have no idea where we're going. And I think that's where I was also for most of the season. Yeah. I could have written over and over again, I have no idea what's going to happen next.
I think
because there is no basis.
That's the thing, because like for every flaw because I mean like any complaints I have, it's still kind of like padded by, but that was like there's so much good in there as well. Because I agree with you when you're just saying it's so batshit crazy, because there's almost like a sense of irony to it all that it's like it's so lazily written, but it's not, it doesn't necessarily acknowledge itself, but it's like it's in a way winking at the audience. Because there's just like, there's no way that shit like this is happening, like would happen. But it's like, we've got to do this because it's almost like people expect the crazy and we have to deliver on that front. So it's like, a lot of it just feels like so pointless, but it's just like, it's like, okay, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy moments like this. And like, the whole, like the kid exploding, because like normally I would say just like, who cares about Gary? Like he's a non-character that we were introduced to in this episode, but it's just like, but you need to like, we're not in the Scream franchise here. We're in Chucky, and Chucky plays by his own set of rules. You know, things like this do not matter. Like I actually found Gary's death to be kind of funny. To be honest, me too, a little bit. Like I felt bad. I didn't, but I just like it was just kind of hilarious because Gary was like, he was not a real person. He was just like this over the top, like enthusiastic kid who Jake like loved. It's just like, nobody's going to be there for Gary. Like, that's why I have to do it. And that's why it made the melodrama feel so like stretched throughout the rest of the season. Cause it's just like, you're beating yourself up. Or like, I understand, but it's just like, but as an audience, like, we don't care. Like, just be yourself sort of thing. so I did have those conflicting emotions for sure. But that's how I got myself through, is just think like, this is supposed to be fucking nuts. So just go with it. Cause we know what's coming.
Well, I cared because Jake cared. And I also cared because it's another little boy who, I didn't realize this until Jake spelled it out for us, I think later in another episode. But because I didn't know Gary was, or I don't remember it being really strongly kind of like pointed out that Gary was also a foster child. I, for some reason, perceived that Gary must be the son, and so it's what we've got is like another kind of like Kyle Andy dynamic, where there's an older teen character who has a very protective impulse toward this very young character. The problem is Gary's instinct for survival is nowhere near Andy's, unfortunately, like he doesn't have the presence of mind to look at a Chucky doll that's alive and go, "What the fuck? Stay away from me." It's just like, you want me to take you out of state, across state lines? Okay, or whatever.
I mean, to be fair,
he was
in
in
the
Salem.
original,
It was across city boundaries. He was
in the
Salem.
original Child's Play, there was that stretch of the movie where Chucky was able to convince Andy to do crazy shit,
true.
like get on the skip school, get on the train to go to Eddie Caputo's house to blow it up, and all that. So I mean, at least it's the story is breaking the rules of just like reality in a way, but it's also staying true to itself. So I can't fault Don Mancini for any of that. It's just kind of like you're still doing what you've always been doing. But
also, yeah.
No. I was just like, we should get to the next episode, but
okay.
But finish off on your last thought.
Yeah, just to close this up.
Yeah.
Another reason why this didn't feel kind of like a slog to me as of yet with this episode was probably because of how much was packed into the back end of it, what with the explosion and then the sitting on Dr. Mixer's, and then being told they're going to the Catholic school of the Incarnate Lord, which is basically... I wrote before anyone commented on it, I felt like it was Hogwarts for juvenile delinquents. And then they find out as they're writing up there that it used to be the Burlington Home for Wayward Boys, where Charles Lee Ray, the boy, was raised after he killed his mother in the closet and had to go somewhere and, be cared for. And then we find out that like Lexi's got this rivalry, or I don't even know rivalry, but this bully of her own. Like he was kind of like an unofficial mentor for her. She says he taught her everything she knew, which we'll discuss when we get there. But Trevor Kane, the introduction of Sister
basically
Ruth,
the what's the character from the blonde kid from Harry Potter?
Right, Draco Malfoy.
Yeah.
Totally. And then, but Sister Ruth, the introduction of Sister Ruth, just kind of like welcoming them, in quotes, welcoming them to the school. And she's giving, one thing I love about this actress who's playing Sister Ruth is I'm getting the same kind of peculiarity from just her facial structure and her energy that I get from Caroline. So even though Caroline isn't in the show for much of the season, I still have this weird source of Caroline energy coming from Sister Ruth because she's just as weird. And she's got those eyes. She's like, if they were going to ever like speed it up and go jump into the future and have Caroline age and have somebody play her as an adult, they should have the Sister Ruth actress play her.
And what's the actress's name?
Here, let me look it up. Say things while I look it up.
Well, she was on Hannibal, the TV series. She played the reporter, Freddie Lowndes, who was like the Philip Seymour Hoffman character.
Right.
In Red Dragon.
Laura Jean Chorostecki is her name.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that she was in it because I remember like during production, Don Mancini had like tweeted about her, just like, we cast this actress because I know that he did writing on Hannibal. And he was like also a big fan of the show, so it made sense. So just like, okay, I'm interested in. And I think there was a lot of theories floating around there because there was a lot of redheads coming into the show, so it was almost like who's Glenda. So I know that there was like theories that like that she was going to be.
I mean, I kind of stopped after we had our discussion after season 1.
Yeah.
Hey, Des, cat's mewing. After we had our discussion with season 1, establishing how implausible it was that Mrs. I can't remember her name right now. The teacher, the redheaded teacher with the glasses.
Her name is Miss Fairchild.
Miss Fairchild. After we, I brought it to the table that like there were threads among the internet that were postulating that she might be Glenda or whatever, and we discussed mathematically how that doesn't make any kind of sense because the age bracket just doesn't seem.
And the fact that this franchise is so committed to its continuity.
Yeah.
I think they might have cleared. We'll get to it, but they might have cleared up some issues that I did have where there might have been an inconsistency. But the next episode 2, the sinners are much more fun. Let's get into this episode because this is where we get the was this
the first Godfather reference of the franchise? Because I don't remember any others, and it's a good one because it's horror adjacent. For Tiffany to wake up.
There hasn't been any Godfather references in Child's Play 1 or 2, for sure. Yeah, because I've just been rewatching them as we've been doing the podcast.
Yes,
and I don't think it wasn't really until Bride, and especially Seed, that the movies really started to get meta and referencey. So if there was a Godfather reference, it wouldn't have been until like the middle to later movies. But yeah, I don't. Did they even ever explain? Because Tiffany wakes up, finds the severed doll head in the bed, and did they ever explain who put it there?
I mean, I think it's left for us to kind of presume that it was left there by either Glenn or Glenda, who were in league with Nika this entire time and had access to I almost called her Jennifer, to Tiffany's, well, it is Jennifer Tilly's home, but to Tiffany's now home that she was unaware of the entire time. So
I guess that's probably the most plausible thing, because I remember I saw it on the first time and I'm like, oh, this is a mystery thread, and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I just rewatched the season, I'm just like, I don't think that was ever answered. And I don't think they ever specifically answered it, but that does make sense that if they were in league with Nika, that the twins were probably there coming and going, the night before, the week before, whatever, and had done that.
Right.
Which I think is just diabolical.
As opposed to what Tiffany was doing, which was totally
this is the thing. This is the thing, though. Like Tiffany is just like, she could do no wrong because like she is doing unspeakably evil things, but she's so fabulous in everything that she does. That just like, I want more of her. And we've talked about this before. And I'm going to say it again, like, it would be nice to see Tiffany back in the doll again, but I don't ever want to not see Tiffany as Jennifer Tilly. I think that there's something so demented about the fact that it's like this old woman, essentially, at this point, who is basically, like, her life is tethered to the Chucky doll. And it's almost like this whatever happened to Baby Jane scenario between the two of them. They're just kind of like, they hate each other, but they're all that they've got. And I feel like that this dynamic was kind of missing from the season. Like, I definitely wanted more Chucky Tiffany. Like, I'm love that we got more Tiffany this season, but it was just like, what I love is just seeing Tiffany, like Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany, not the doll, and Chucky as the doll, and that dynamic, because it's it brings me back to like the first half of Bride of Chucky, of just like her kind of holding him prisoner in this little like cradle or whatever cage, and her just doing her thing, going out, disposing of dead bodies, and then coming home and being like, if you behave, like, I'll make you Swedish meatballs, or, just like that
Right.
dynamic. Like, that's hilarious. I could watch a sitcom about that. So that's why it's just like never, once you put Tiffany back in the doll, it's like you lose the nuances of Jennifer's performance. You don't get the same thing. It's just like a stiff animatronic doll, which is funny in its own right, but it's, I felt like there was very minimal actual Tiffany doll in this movie, because all we really got was the stuff in the first episode for like the opening, and then what we get to later, the discovery and I guess Tiffany's basement. But yeah, I'm all for keeping Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany.
Tiffany inside the body of I agree with you. That is something I really enjoyed, even just like the prospect of at the end of Cult, just watching Jennifer Tilly, Tiffany seated in a passenger seat, seated in a driver's seat.
Yeah.
Chucky, Nika seated in the passenger seat, and doll Tiffany seated in the back, and they're all laughing together. That opened up a whole network of possibilities where I'm like, I want to see more of this.
Yeah.
The thing is, I'm really enjoying what I'm getting. This was also the first point where they started introducing this kind of idea of a Chucky hive mind, which is weird because it's still this weird, nebulous, not quite defined thing, but it's like no matter how many Chuckies there are, it's kind of like maybe a ripple effect, I'm guessing. Like over a certain amount of time, if something happens to one Chucky and the other Chuckies live long enough to kind of like feel the wave, the effect, they'll have the same memories as that Chucky, but it takes a while for it all to get booted up, or something like that. Because if you die before you know what's going on, then or if you kill the one who has that memory, because isn't that what happens? Like Tiffany killed the Chucky doll who knew that she betrayed him, so none of the other Chuckies now have that memory that she called the cops or like tipped off Eddie Caputo, so Chucky would get killed, basically.
Well, I mean, what's interesting? Finish your thought there.
Well, because it was also kind of introduced in the last episode when they were all like looking at Andy and they didn't really recognize him at first, and then all of a sudden they started to realize who he was, and they all started to be attracted to Tiffany and didn't really understand why. And if they would have lived long enough, they might have understood why.
It's almost like I got like the Toy Story like Buzz Lightyear. Once when he first is in the package, he's just like he's Buzz Lightyear. But then it's like he has to come out of the package and then realize, no, I'm a toy, and it just takes some time. That's kind of the impression that I got. But I was gonna say that this season feels the most like it feels like a sequel to not just Seed of Chucky, but also Cult of Chucky, because there's several story threads that are really getting dealt with in this season. And what's interesting, like I love both of those. I mean, I love every Child's Play movie, but I know that those two movies always tend to end up on like the lower end of people's rankings. And I know that season 2 of Chucky has not been, or at least was not as well received as the season 1. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, just because it was maybe dealing with storylines that were not as popular.
Maybe. And maybe that's why I keyed in with it so much, because I'm with you on the Seed and Cult. Like, I'm not going to show my hand and give my ranking. But I love both of those movies, too, in a way that a lot of time kind of like, separates me from, when I have discussions with other people who love the Child's Play franchise, or, say they love the franchise, but, and then, there are no
buts with this franchise.
Yeah, not for me. No.
I'll
take everyone.
That my, the reference I believe it's in this episode that I really picked up on. I tweeted Don Mancini, and he liked it. But it was because I'm just like, I saw what you did there. And it was when Nika or when Tiffany puts Nika in the room and puts the ball gag in and like closes the door and locks it. And then Nika has the thing where she kind of like looks over her shoulder and it does the whole like dream sort of thing because she's now talking to Chucky. And she says, I think she's starting to suspect something. Yeah. Which is a reference to What Lies Beneath, starring Michelle Pfeiffer. Yes. Which we need to cover that movie soon. It's such a good movie, and we love Michelle. We stan a Michelle here, but
yes, we do.
I loved it because it was like that trailer for the movie. Like I know that's a line that shows up in the trailer, and it's like this big part. And I think they even made fun of it in one of the Scary movies because wasn't it like a joke with Michael Jackson or something?
No. It was that was The Others.
Okay.
They made fun of What Lies Beneath in, I believe, Scary Movie 2 when Anna Faris, Cindy, puts on the red dress and becomes allegedly possessed by the deceased wife of, the ghost man who lived there and everything. And she's going over to Tim Curry. She says, "Do you think she's beginning to suspect something?" And he's like, he says whatever he says, and then there's a shadow that Anna Faris leans forward into, and as she progresses out of the shadow, we reveal that it is not Anna Faris, it is Sean Wayans in a wig, just going, "Your wife." And then we find out that the two of them have been in the room wearing the dress, and Sean just brought it along. Because what was Sean's name in the Scary Movies? I can't remember.
I just
remember Brenda and Cindy and Shorty and whatever. If you know it, you're screaming it at whatever you're listening to. This.
I have not watched
Sorry,
them
I don't remember
in
Sean's.
a minute, but no, I just love that because it's so esoteric that I'm sure like probably most people saw that and just like didn't pick up that it was actually a reference, and if you did, then you're awesome. Right. That was my favorite.
One that I picked up on was when the detective comes to visit Jennifer Tilly's mansion in Beverly Hills to speak to Jennifer Tilly about Nika being missing and everything like that, and he introduces himself as Detective Sam Gavin, and I was like, "Aww." Because Sam Loomis, OG Sam Loomis in Psycho, was played by John Gavin. Sam Gavin. Interesting. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. That made me happy.
Did you also recognize that house as well?
No. What house is it?
Oh, so again, another Hannibal, the series callback. That was the house that belonged to the Gillian Anderson character. That's where she had her therapy sessions with Hannibal in the same living room where Tiffany is watching Liar Liar.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh my god. No, it looks so different. Oh my god. I'm tripping because I fucking love Hannibal.
Yeah.
I fucking love Hannibal. But I mean, like, I don't know. It was so much darker in this. Yeah. It looked like a cave. It looked like poor Tiffany was like living
except for like
shrouded.
the pink bedroom, like the the fairy castle.
Yeah, of
bedroom.
course. Oh my god, the cotton candy pink bedroom and the frou-frou dresses that poor Nika's being made to wear and everything like that. Like it was crazy. But and also just the fact. It started out funny, and it started to become laughably sad as the season progressed. Just the fact that Tiffany was always watching Liar Liar. Like, that's the only Jennifer Tilly movie. Now, no Fabulous Baker Boys, no Bullets Over Broadway, not even Bride of Chucky. Like, she's just watching Liar Liar and I'm guessing it's because it's a Universal property also, so they don't have to pay any rights to air it, like over and over, or to run it over and over again in the episodes. But I love it. I just think it's hilarious because they even say something like it. I think Nika says later, like she wants to watch a movie that's not starring Jennifer Tilly, and I'm like, well, Liar Liar wasn't necessarily starring Jennifer Tilly either.
No,
she was
she's
just
had a bit part
featured.
But it's like, not only is Tiffany watching Liar Liar, but she's just watching that one scene that's like the courtroom scene with Jennifer.
Like, I wonder if she watches the rest of the movie at all, or if she just like fast forwards.
It's like, I just want to see my parts. It's just like, they're not
Yes!
even your parts. But the
That's another thing, is that she's got this glorious Norma Desmond, and I think they make a Norma Desmond reference at some point.
Yeah.
But like this glorious kind of like Norma Desmond, like, you know, isolated, self-imposed exile that she's got going and everything like that, living in her own little world.
You could actually say that the whatever happened to Baby Jane is because I alluded to that of like her and Chucky, but I mean in this instance it's more so just like her and Nika, with like Nika being this like bound in a wheelchair, handicapped, that can't do anything, can't go anywhere, and there's just this resentment between the two of them.
And it'll come up again, but we'll wait until we get to that episode.
Yeah. But yeah, I love all of it. I love how like referential they are to like Jennifer Tilly in real life, because they're just like, what are you gonna do now? You like blew through all your Simpsons money, because I guess she was married to, was it one of the producers on the Simpsons, or because like Jennifer Tilly, I don't know if she owns like a stake in it or what is it? But but it's just like all these things that are like true facts to Jennifer Tilly, the person in real life, and here's Tiffany just exploiting every like financial that Jennifer Tilly has to just sustain her ridiculous tastes and expenses, and just like all this shit that's just like, I talked to you, I think this comes up later on in another episode, but they're just like, we talked to your like financial advisors, like, you don't have any money left, sort of things. They're just, I just love the fact that because this is one of the things I do like about Seed of Chucky, is just how much Jennifer Tilly makes fun of herself in that movie.
Yes.
And I'm getting that like on full blast here, and it's so good.
Me too.
Because like she's such a good sport about all of it, and she's just like, she just goes in there and is like so like just so harsh on herself. But it's like, that's the best comedy. Like, just like, if you make fun of yourself, then nobody else can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember them having an exchange on the commentary for Seed of Chucky. Don Mancini saying that he read somewhere some critic reviewing the movie saying Jennifer Tilly deserved some kind of good sport Oscar for the amount of jokes that are made at her expense, and for just going on with the movie. And she said to Dawn in her full, because when she's really talking and really like expressing her opinions, she doesn't sound like this. She's sitting there going like, "Oh, I don't think it was an Oscar." I'm just like, oh my god, I love her full throat laugh. But it doesn't sound like that. But that's my horrible impression of Jennifer Tilly not talking like this. But the only other thing from that particular storyline that I can reference in this episode is the teasing of the Glenn and Glenda appearance. And I just wrote Glenn and Glenda, I want them! With, a lot of exclamation marks and a lot of urgency there. But in the other side of the storyline, we have the introduction of Father Bryce, Devon Sawa's role this season.
His third role in the series.
Yes. But he's still harping on winners and like pressuring young people to like, be something more than what they are, which feels like, okay, there's something familiar there. And doesn't Jake even says the guy reminds me of my dad, which I'm just kind of like, okay, that's campy. That's fun.
There's also the idle hands reference.
Yes. When he says idle hands, and I'm like, ha! He said it. I saw that movie. And he said it right, because I think in Idle Hands, the movie, he says idle hands are the devil's playpen. And in this, he says idle hands are the devil's playground, because, biblical reference. But I guess. Is it a biblical? I don't know. I should know more than you. I was raised Catholic. Yeah, I was raised Catholic. And but okay, there's also the introduction of Nadine. And this, we started to touch on just discussing Redheads, I guess, in the franchise. And even the franchise itself alludes to this a little later about like it being one of the signs, like every time we meet a kind of weird redheaded person. Are we gonna like, is this another Chucky?
Is it a red herring?
Because I realize I've already been conditioned to suspect people with red hair in this franchise just because of Miss Fairchild last season and because of Nadine this season. I was scared of her in the beginning because I didn't know, are you a loose cannon? Are you gonna kill them all? Like, is Chucky gonna recruit you because Ginger speaks to Ginger? Like, I didn't know. And it's not like a deeply held, what's the word I'm looking for? A deeply held prejudice I have against redheads. But just within the franchise, I notice when there's a red-haired character, my dander goes up a little bit. I feel like my spidey sense kicks in, just like keep an eye on the redhead in the Child's Play franchise. So I realized I was very weary of Nadine in this episode. I didn't know what to make of her because she was also kind of flighty and sweet seeming, and I didn't know if that's too
I think that, like, her
in
introduction
franchise.
was like she was alluding to just like having this wild streak or whatever, because she was just like, because of all the time she's had to go to confessional. And I think Lexi asks her, or one of them asks her, just like, what did you do? And she just smiles and like turns around, like exits the conversation. So it's just like, it's just like, a sense of mystery.
But not in a good way.
I think that I think that the fact that by the end of the episode we are introduced to the feat of Glenn and Glenda, that it sort of squashes any sort of misdirect that what's the nun's sister Ruth Ruth or Nadine could be at least Glenn or Glenda, who knows what other children or relatives of Chucky are out there. Because something that this franchise likes to do a lot, which I actually love, is it sort of rewrites history. Like, there's so many retcons, because we saw that in season 1 where we find out that Tiffany was the one who called the police on Charles Lee Ray the night that that begins the franchise, when he's gunned down in the toy store. So it's sort of like they're all constantly introducing new mythology to the canon, and I think it always enriches things. So there's always a possibility that you could see a redhead character, and just like, is there a relationship to them? So like, they literally are in a way red herrings, because it's they stick out, and they are kind of suspicious and weird at the beginning. Because I know with Sister Ruth in this episode, I actually feel bad for her at first, because you can clearly see she's trying to be, the favorite sister. Sorry, what's
Sister
the
Elizabeth?
What's the father?
Father Bryce.
Father Bryce. Yeah. Because he's just like, likes the other one. Like, she's sort of like the whipping post of like the entire staff there. And then you have the other one. I really liked her. And I totally forgot her name too. The one that Sister Catherine. Yeah, because she was just like, I just knew, just like, okay, like, don't do anything to her. You better not hurt her, because she was like, it's just like, here's like an empathetic voice of reason who like she respects the system, but she also knows like, you need to make allowances. You need to like bend the rules for the children, because we are in a different time here. It's just like, she is like in there like being like reasonable and thinking of like, how can we adapt to make this the best experience, because like there's so many instances that come up, and she's just sort of like, no, I think that's good. I think that you need to like nurture that, and then you have Father Bryce, who's just like, nope, like this needs to be punished, and that's sort of like the same thing with like the Sister Elizabeth. She's kind of like toes that line, and Ruth is kind of, she's just an agent to whoever is going to give her the validation that she needs, which is interesting where her character goes. But I felt,
she's got like middle child syndrome.
Yeah.
Whereas Sister Elizabeth is like the favorite Marsha Brady of the family.
And Catherine's like the young one who can get away with like talking back.
Right.
That's actually a really good analogy of just like, if you look at the sisters, like the three of them do kind of represent that. And yes, absolutely. Like I do feel bad for Ruth because she's just like gets the short end of the stick every time. It's just she just gets abused. She's the one that's working the hardest. She is the Jan Brady.
She's the Jan Brady of the school of the incarnate Lord.
Yeah.
But one thing I loved about Sister Elizabeth, because she does show her hand really early when she is telling Lexi like what she has to do to alter her appearance, and she says, "You look like Madonna, and not the good one." And I thought even her references like aren't like that's not really a current reference, sister.
Yeah.
Lexi isn't trying to look like Madonna, but it's a good play on words, you know, because there aren't a lot of religious named pop stars left. And then, we got introduced to Trevor also. And while I was watching him, all I could think was Lexi wasn't lying. He really did teach her everything she knew, as far as the way he was condescending to her in that passive-aggressive way, socially in front of the eyes of everybody, without a care in the world. I'm like, that is exactly what made me hate Lexi in season 1 when she started the Kickstarter for Jake because he's poor. And then when Miss Fairchild tried to call her on it, she was like, I'm a good person and I'm trying to help the needy. And if you don't understand that, you're stifling my, like what, and all this bullshit where she's talking out of her ass and playing the game. And I'm like, oh my God, she really did learn everything from him. Fuck. And he's good at it because it looks like he might get away with it. I was worried. I was worried he was going to be a source of continual like kind of sadism but that I couldn't take part in, I felt like I would be suffering the on the other side of the sadistic edge that Lexi was, and for a little while I was, but we'll
get to him, but was there anything else you wanted to say about this episode? Because I feel like a lot of this is still like set up.
Well, Sister Elizabeth's kill, because she was killed in this episode.
She was. It was a little reminiscent of I want to say Child's Play 3 with the was it the I don't know, I want to say Colonel.
I don't remember what his title was, but Colonel is applicable given where the season goes. But no, but that military man, the one who was in charge of the school, who just saw Chucky and had a heart attack out of fear. I was like, oh, well, that's a nice nod to Child's Play 3.
But the difference in Child's Play 3, it was just like Chucky was like really bummed out about that because it was almost like it was like blue balls, and here he's just sort of like, wow, I didn't even have to do much, like you just take the selfie.
He's adapted. I also appreciated like little things, like little set dressing. I noticed for the toy drive, I believe they were occupying Father Bryce's office, and one of the things that I noticed on Father Bryce's desk was a rainbow, but it was like a dull, dreary rainbow that I swear was covered in cobwebs or something. And because all I did think was, because I know he's going to stifle the homosexuality that's going on in Devon Evans and Jake, didn't realize we'll get there, but I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to kind of like plant a seed for something that pays off a little bit later. I just thought, he's squelching. This is a place where color dies, like there are no rainbows in the incarnate Lord. But only other things, the atmosphere overall though, with the hopelessness and the bleakness, there were 2 references I got from it, of the school. Aside from Hogwarts, aesthetically, just the darkness and the dreariness reminded me of Nika's house in Curse. Just kind of like this inescapable gothic quality. But the tension within it and the hopelessness, that particular brand of hopelessness reminded me of the mental facility where Nika was held against her will and in Cult. Yeah, I felt the same kind of frustration, like just get them out of there.
It was a real downer, and I think that's what made like the scenes with Tiffany so great, because it's just like, this is what I love. Like, it was a good balance, and that is actually a good segue into the next episode, Hail Mary, because I feel like these next 2 episodes, they're very disjointed in that way, whereas like Hail Mary stays at the school. Like we don't see Tiffany at all in this episode. We're just following the kids. And then the next episode after that, Death on Denial, is completely Tiffany. So I think that it was intentional. They wanted to have like a full hour dedicated to, each sub-story there. I don't know what, but I want to ask you, what did you think of that decision?
Let's put it this way. While I was watching episode 3, I didn't like it. Yeah. While I was watching episode 4, I liked it.
I agree. Like, it made sense I couldn't see episode 4 being, constantly back and forth. Like, that needed to be a story in and of itself. But yeah, for the third episode, I said we weren't going to rank anything, and we're not. But I think episode 3 might have been my least favorite episode. It was just
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. It was that was where I started to feel the slog, because that hopelessness I alluded to in episode 2 that I felt, like aesthetically, and like it was like, okay, obviously this isn't a place we want to go. Episode 3 was so concentrated in it that it just, and also because I wanted to see Glenn and Glenda, like I've been waiting for this moment forever. So I just felt a little, I'm also just like,
maybe they should have switched the episodes around since episode 2.
No.
No, you don't think so?
No, because you don't want to have your dessert first. Sometimes
you do.
Like, no, I couldn't have. If they would have done, it would have been great to, like, after episode 2 get episode 4, because like dessert, but then to realize but you still have the whatever vegetables you don't like, to sort through, even after you've had your dessert, and they're going to taste even more bitter now, kind of thing. Well, because this is the thing. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say episode 3 is probably, like, I have the least to say about this episode, but what is the thing?
Well, this is the thing. It's introduced with just Jake and his guilt, and I was worried about him because I'm like, your guilt and you carrying these things makes you vulnerable, and you're not going to be in the right headspace to fight Chucky, and we need you there because the 3 of you are not bonding the way you should. I thought the fact that you all had some kind of part in the death of Gary and the destruction of the mayoral household, or was it the mayoral household, or was it another?
Well, no, that one was already destroyed in season 1.
That's right.
This was like the new,
so
the smaller one.
Yes.
They were literally living in squalor, in this season.
And that got destroyed too. So so you're already, so I thought at the end of episode 1, actually, them going to the school was going to be what bonded them, and I was really grateful for that. I'm like, oh, finally a common predicament that they can all share. Yeah. And then it didn't play that way, and I don't want to say it was like disappointing to the point where I checked out of the series, but it was disappointing. Just, again, I've said this about many movies that I do not enjoy, because no matter how well made they may be, if it's just unhappiness and just, or vitriol or malice or malady and just discomfort and sadness and all of that, it's going to be like, well, what are you dragging me through? And that I felt dragged through this episode.
I actually felt that the one thing that was kind of like holding this episode together was actually Nadine, because she was sort of like, she was the light. It's just like, you're the darkness and I'm the light. And she was just like, it's just like, it didn't matter what the predicament is, because she always saw sort of like, just like was so optimistic and just saw like the silver lining of every situation, and was just like such a quirky character. Because I love the whole bit of her needing to confess her sins. And she's just like, I think I'm going to need about 30, no, make that 45 minutes. Like, she's just like, here's this girl who's like clearly annoying to everyone, but she's just she's just owns that and is just like doing whatever she wants. So she was actually kind of like one of the parts of the season, like especially earlier on, that was kind of getting me through the, as you would say, the muck and the mire.
Yeah, of course. It becomes her superpower, and I'm grateful for that. There were a few other things I liked, like aesthetically, like I thought the crosses in the title design with the Chucky title.
Oh, those were great all
at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, they were great all season, but these, when I saw the crosses, I was like, okay, these are the creepiest yet. Like we've had some really inventive ones, some really like, you know, tonally on point ones, but this, I was just kind of like, as a recovering from Catholicism person, I'll be saying that the rest of my life. I see that and I'm just kind of, and I hear the creepy Chucky music and I'm just like, ugh. But apologies if, you know, there are any Catholics listening. It's not you. It's just my relationship to the religion. I also, one thing I did appreciate, again, with Sister Catherine, in addition to being kind of like this benevolent force with the children, I noticed this also established her as like a kind of peaceful observer of nuance in the art, even though she's confined to teaching, you know, about these pieces of art that depict Christ. I liked the fact that she had an artist's eye. You know what I mean? She was discussing them the way she would discuss them in any other art course. It wasn't just, Jesus is good and there is no reason you ask why. You know, you just do it because. No, she wanted them to develop their minds and to develop their eyes and the fact
and to
that
challenge
she can recognize
the system.
Yes, yes. I all of that I loved. And also, it was kind of entertaining, the reprogramming of little Chucky, like, you know, showing him the
Clockwork
thing and
Orange,
Psycho 2, which, you know, we didn't see Meg Tilly, but she's in Psycho 2. Yeah. we should have. That would have been hilarious. Yeah. But just the vomiting, like the detox of it all was kind of, you know, but I mean, then we get Father Bryce seeing Devon Evans and Jake kissing, and I'm just like, oh no, this is so American Horror Story Asylum, which ironically is one of the strongest seasons of American Horror Story for me. But oh my God, talk about being dragged through something. So I was just kind of like, I don't want to be dragged through my Chucky. Where's the fun? And then actually, Sister Ruth, I thought was kind of fun. Just when I think Lexi's trying to get the drugs. So she goes to the infirmary and she asks where the nurse is. And Sister Ruth, with a plucky defensiveness, says, I am the nurse. Don't look so surprised. I also teach auto. Just like, there are little keys, like little pockets of wonder. I also loved little brain bleached Chucky's, like, I got another Anna Faris reference actually from this, because I always think about Anna Faris with those big eyes in the scary movies, just like, what are you talking about? And I felt like that's what I thought of whenever I saw Good Chucky. He's not. I don't think he's been dubbed Good Chucky yet, but after he's been detoxed and everything like that, just looking at everyone with those big eyes, he has never been more adorable to me.
Well, because I think that was my favorite moment. It was probably like my favorite line too. And the one that Lexi comments on when she's like, okay, that is cute. But when they feed him the apple and he's just like biting into it and he's just like, it's so crisp.
Yeah, Brad Dourif did something to his voice. I mean, every one of the other incarnate Chuckies had some kind of vocal quality that was either modulated, like, you know, like on a soundboard, or also Brad Dourif doing something like adding a slight lisp, or just like speaking in a different
one.
Yes,
because I saw Fiona Dourif tweeted something about it, because she's just like, when the episode came out, and because I guess they were, you know, all in Toronto or wherever it was filmed, and probably staying in hotels together. So like she just commented and just like, just imagine having to like listen to my father like do that voice like outside of filming, just to like practice to get it right the whole time. And she's like, that was basically him for days, just like working.
Oh my God.
That Apocalypse
Now
reference.
Yes. And also just also little good Chucky's just little like he'll just sing to himself, like he'll just hear a word and just start saying it, like sing-songy over and over again, asking questions like, where do dolls come from? And I'm just like, oh.
But then, well, if we could to finish this, because I think there is fun in this episode, and I think it's when
Yeah.
Trevor gets his comeuppance because he's going to plant
Right.
the drugs in Lexi's room. And that's where we get our first introduction of, we don't actually see him, not until like the very last scene, but
Yeah.
I guess like the macho Chucky, whatever we're calling him.
I kept calling him Ripped Chucky.
Yeah. Who just
Chucky with the
punches
pecs and the
punches a
six-pack.
hole through Trevor. There's that great, it's almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03.
Yeah.
that
Totally.
Shot through the back of the truck. Or the van, but yeah, and then just the predicament of them coming back in the room, and of course, I think they even like Lexi even says like, of course there'd be like a room inspection now.
Right.
Sister Ruth coming along, they're just getting the blankets and then just like, oh, we're just like playing with our stuffed animals and that shit. Like that was all fun. I liked that.
Yeah, but then Lexi goes through withdrawal, and I'm like, oh, fuck, please. But the last thing that I wrote was just, what the fuck is going on with Ripped Chucky? Because I didn't understand, how'd he get that way?
Yeah.
And, like, are they making them? Like, who made him that way? I still, again,
Well, I think that...
don't really... Yeah.
The biology of Chucky, because we've seen, like, because, I mean, if he can eat an apple because he needs nourishment, and he can get shot and, like, bits of his flesh come falling off, like, I think that, like, his anatomy would allow for him to, you know, work out and like build muscle mass. So I just see it that way.
So this little Chucky has just been like out in the woods doing sit-ups and doing like toe touches and
I mean, that's the
running.
that's the irony. That's like the ridiculousness of this, because there are no rules that say, like, at this point, it's like, is he flesh and blood or is he a plastic doll? And where is, like, there's almost like it, sometimes he is and sometimes he isn't. But no, you're not supposed to question it, because as soon as you start to question the logic of it, then it ceases to be enjoyable. So it's just one of those things, just like, it doesn't matter. It's there. Yeah. It's batshit crazy. Like the bomb thing in the first episode, you just have to accept it.
Right.
Are you ready to talk about Death on Denial? Yes. Okay. Do you want to start us off?
God, am I? Okay, the fact that it's billed as a Jennifer Tilly mystery, I'm already transfixed. I feel like I'm pressing my hands together as in prayer, like against my chin, and I feel like I sat like this for the entire episode with just this look of hopeful expectation, but also absolute gratitude. I feel like I was praying. Thank you for giving me this episode. Thank you for all the gifts you bestow, Don Mancini and your team. But just the fact that, like, okay, first off, we have, like, Tiffany in one of those pink floral gauzy synthetic headpieces that I swear I saw on Elizabeth Taylor or even Joan Crawford, arguably, like in the 1970s or late 60s. She all of a sudden, she was always like this retro, I always had this, like, kind of retro fashion sense right up until, like, season 1, where she kind of stuck with that 50s sleek, you know, like clean kind of thing. And all of a sudden now it's like muumuus and fabric-y shower caps that are just headpieces. I don't know. I mean, she's you used the term, I mean, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to object that early in the podcast, but you used the term old woman, but she really was dressing the part. Yeah. In this particular episode, I
just want to amend that, because I meant it in a way of just like, because I don't consider Jennifer Tilly an old woman, because what is old? What is age? But I just meant, like, just in terms of like where she started in the series, because Bride of Chucky at this point is 25 years old, and at that time I believe that she was 40 or, you know, in her 40s. I don't know. I think so. But it's just like we're very far removed from that. She's essentially that character, like, you know, the Baby Jane character, just like an eccentric older lady who lives in a huge mansion by herself or what, like with a prisoner. That's what I meant by it. I apologize for any if I had offended anyone earlier on. because it was not meant that way. So I stand corrected. Thank you for educating. But
no problem.
I knew when I said it, I knew it's not what I meant, but we were already like going through it, and I didn't want to like stop the momentum. But thank you.
And
I
neither
appreciate
did I.
it.
But I'm glad it came up. I knew it would come up later anyway.
Yeah.
But okay. Then there's also the introduction of Jeeves. this really, like, he must be from Haddonfield. Like, he's got that East Coast, like, talking out of the side of his mouth, and talking out of turn and calling people out and not realizing he is a butler and that he has one job, and that is to guard the room and occasionally bring champagne or hors d'oeuvres or something like that. But there is no refinement, and like poor Tiffany, but I mean, like, Tiffany's back is up against the wall. She's got nowhere to turn. She's got guests. She's got Joe Pantoliano. She's got Gina Gershon. She's got Sutton Strack, and the one that just had me go, ah! I think I literally made like a baby coo noise when Meg Tilly was revealed on the other side of the door. And I was like, ah! Oh my God, what am I watching? What is this? Is this like Clue? What is it? And it kind of was, but kind of wasn't. Like, it had all the things that excite me about Clue the movie, but it also didn't have any of the predictability. I mean, because I've seen the movie so many times, it took so many turns that I felt like, again, this was another batshit one, but a batshit one where I had no idea from moment to moment where we were going, what was going to happen, who was going to survive, and
what was going to be left of them.
And what was going to be left of them. But I mean, also at this stage of the franchise, to have Meg Tilly playing herself with Tiffany masquerading around as Jennifer Tilly in front of Jennifer Tilly's, perceivedly from our vantage point, her nearest and dearest famous friends, you know. Mm-hmm. It's just the most, it's one of the gayest things I've ever beheld. I mean, you know, when your worlds collide and like your gay world mixes with your horror, it's like the peanut butter and the chocolate, and you're just so glad that accident happened. That's what this episode is for me. I mean, what about you, from anything I missed thus far?
No, I absolutely agree, because I was even just thinking, just like, how do people perceive, I mean, you know, mostly straight audiences perceive this episode, because it is so camp and it is so gay. And there's references to everything, like you were just talking about, like Norma Desmond, and there's obviously there's Margot Channing with Gina Gershon, her martini, and the references there. But then they're also referencing Bound, and just like actual like projects that they've worked on together.
Yeah.
And I'm not familiar with Sutton. I get like she's on Real Housewives.
Right.
So I don't. Which then, like, because that seems like a newer friend to Jennifer Tilly, which just made me think, like, okay, so is this a friend that, because they're obviously friends Tiffany in real life, but like a friend that Tiffany made somewhere along the way. But no,
I also talked about her owing her money, which made me think, is Sutton Strack also a card playing friend? Because I know Jennifer Tilly played poker like professionally for a long time in the 90s and on since then. So yeah, you're guessing.
I have no idea. I was just happy for all of it, and I just loved, like, this really showcased Jennifer Tilly's talent, like more than any episode, because I loved just seeing her in that predicament, and then just the like, no, almost like nobody does this better than Jennifer Tilly, of just like, you can see the wheels turning in her head, or just like trying to figure out what am I going to do? Like, the opening quote or running quote that you referenced, of just like when the detective came to the door, that scene alone that was back in episode 2, just like her eye movement was like all like just like just trying to think of,
and then he would ask her a question, no, before he's finished the question,
and just
he
like
starts
looking
asking
down,
no,
looking over here, and that was like, this entire episode was just watching her do that, like just trying to maneuver through everything and make it believable, and everyone's like, I mean, the kid, like the Glenda, they know.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just, I mean, like Gina Gershon and Joe Pantoliano have their own agenda, but but Sutton is just like, oh, like murder mystery. They're all just like playing along. And then there's Meg, and she's just like, what's going? I felt really bad for Meg actually, because it was just like Tiffany was so abusive towards her, and it's just like, hey, it's your long lost baby sister, and it's just like
she just wanted to know her family again, her sister and
like
her niece,
swatting her and just like being so
her nibblings, her nibblings,
and just being like, so are you gonna be here long? Like, you know, like don't you have to go?
And going on, I also love that Tiffany shares like enough kind of like vitriol, or I mean, she's putting on an act, but the fact that like she can discuss her Oscar loss to quote unquote that bitch Diane West. I laughed so hard because Diane Weist, you know, I get the joke. And,
was someone corrected her? No.
Yeah, I think Meg did, but she also more allusions within. I mean, allusions outside the franchise, but even within the franchise. Can't remember if it was Glenn or Glenda who made the reference, and we wouldn't hurt a fly. And I'm like, ooh, Psycho reference, but also a reference to Seed of Chucky, because that happened when Glenn, I believe, had the fly on their hand. And I was just kind of like, oh, there it goes, back to his family. Yeah.
The casting of Glenda, because I mean, like, because I was just like looking at the actor. Because what they go by, actor Lachlan Watson, so an actual non-binary pansexual that goes by they them. So just like the thoughtfulness that of just like the that goes into the writing to just be that inclusive and that true to the actual characters that are being written. Like I really appreciated that aspect.
I also feel like I'll make this argument more so when we discuss Seed of Chucky intensely, but I just want to lay the groundwork by saying I really appreciated the fact that Glenn and Glenda and the turmoil within that polarized character was camp, but was also handled with enough, it was infused with enough humanity and enough tragedy that it didn't seem implausible to me to watch living, breathing human beings inhabiting that role and not knowing that they were born a doll. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
No, totally. Like, well, we can talk about more like the juxtaposition in the last episode of just like between like the doll, Gigi and Glenn and Glenda. But you bring up like a really good point, because like this the one actor playing the dual roles, because I was getting more from them than and like argue because like I guess they're a little bit older than probably like the primary characters, like the Jakes and Devon and Lexi, but it's just like their story was interesting to me. Like I was just like, I wanted more from them, because already they have like rich history in the franchise, but also just like the way that their story was written here was already just so much more inherently interesting, based on what was going on, whereas like everything felt so stifled, like you said at the school, that it's just like if you want to show me like a teenager's, or I guess like young adult character, because would they be 18 now at this point? I think because I think it was 18 because they were celebrating the 18th birthday in this.
That's right.
Episode. So yeah, 2004 was when Seed came out. But yeah, I was just I could have followed a whole season of them, and I always kind of wanted more interactions of like all like the younger characters, and I feel like we don't get that. Not to jump ahead, but everything in this episode, because I feel like that's the thing with this season. It's all these like broken up storylines, or at least like this two storylines primarily, but then it's sort of by the end of this episode, it splinters off into another thread, and then they all kind of like coalesce at the end, more introduced. Like I like the idea of like getting to that point, but it's almost like I think that's probably my main gripe, other than like the plot elements that are introduced and then thrown away, is just that I wanted a full season of like that cohesiveness. Like I wish that there was more, because it did feel very broken up. And it's a device that a lot of shows do. And I notice it a lot in sophomore seasons of shows. So like the second season, where they'll establish like a core group of characters in the first season, and then season 2 it's just like, now we're gonna rip them apart and send them on their own little adventures. And it's almost like it's a technique that almost every show does in their second season. And I hate it, and that's why like so many second seasons aren't as successful as their first.
Well, maybe it's also just like a writing exercise to try and define these characters on their own and apart, so they can bring something more to the table when they have them reconvene. I don't know. I mean, I haven't noticed it myself, but I can't really argue it while you're articulating it here. I really want to like, I won't do it now because then there will just be dead air.
I mean, I'm not going to say that it's every show, but I know like off the top of my head, like a handful of shows, that I know like season 2 will do that.
Right. That said, I had a bunch of quotes I just kept writing, like, and some of them from the episode, some of them just like, I just thought of, like, when it was introduced that basically Gina Gershon and Joe Pantoliano had sexual relationships with Jennifer Tilly and wanted to continue them. And all I could think when I saw particularly Gina's seduction of Jennifer, all I could think was the quote from, and not the one you're thinking, but the quote from Seed of Chucky, just when she's auditioning, when Jennifer Tilly is auditioning for Red Man, and she just says, "We're close. Very close." And I'm like, wow, she wasn't lying. Like, I mean, within the lore. What
line did you think I was thinking of?
Probably the like, "Oh, Bound is on cable. Gina Gershon is fingering me." Because as I was saying it, I was realizing that might be the more obvious line people might think I was going to say. But anyway, but I just I was stunned that when it was revealed that Glenn was helping Nika the whole time. That was, it shouldn't have been, I guess, but it was a shocker. And then the flashback we got with Glenn and Glenda discovering her, and the different, also just the different paths that seem to be set up for the two of them to go on, if they were to continue on as separate identities. Those are two separate paths, but they've got this ultimate bonding that goes beyond a twinship, because they've not only they've not only been housed by the same womb at the same time, they've been housed within the same body and consciousness. I mean, or their consciousnesses have occupied the same body at the same time. One has just kind of like been in the driver's seat while the other lay kind of dormant, but they were always together. So the fact that they have this strange, inexpressible almost bond, we just know that, like, I mean, it happens a little bit later, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but just when we find out how much Glenda is missing Glenn, you know, and it makes all the sense in the world to me. Like, that's what I'm talking about. These things that seem to be like psychological connections that all you have to do is let me know it's still there, and it's like, oh, you know, like it makes me, it just makes everything so much more interesting, because I've been following this family for a long time, and I've been wanting more content for a long time. And then I just wrote lines like, "Mom's a murderer, Mom's a lesbian."
Can we also just comment about how stunning Fiona looks?
Oh, God.
Like, she's just like, because they've put her through the ringer in this franchise, really, where she's looked absolutely terrible. Like, they've just made her look like she's at like the end of her rope. You know, we've seen her in the mental institution. She's been handicapped all this time. And here she is. And maybe it's just like the glow of like just like being pampered by Tiffany, but she's just like she looks really hot in this season. And even like
Right.
I don't like to jump ahead again, but by the finale, like after she's kind of been liberated, she's just a smoke show. And I've never seen her that way. But she's stunning.
I mean, I have to admit, like, I remember I liked her. I knew I liked her a lot when I first saw her in Curse. And I knew that she had a striking resemblance to Brad Dourif in all the best ways. Like I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, she totally looks like her father's daughter.
Yeah.
Beautiful, just like wonderful. And so talented and so smart and so watchable, like all of that. So you're a winner. Then I saw Cult, and she looked appropriately like she was living in a mental facility for most of the movie. But ironically enough, when she started playing Charles Lee Ray, she started playing Chucky, with the coat and the hair and the scarf and the demeanor and the grin and the raised eyebrows, I was like, that's when I thought she was a smoke show. That's when I was like, you are fucking hot. You have this like charisma, this confidence, this joie de vivre that you can just kind of like glide into a room and out of room. And even when you're cackling like a little doll and like your father, your actual father, like, oh my God. Yeah, it's like, there's a talent boner that I'm getting, And,
well, because we already talked about how like in season 1, she was essentially playing how many roles? Well, she was playing Nika. She was playing the flashback Charles Lee Ray.
Yes.
She was playing Nika possessed by Chucky. And then she was playing Nika pretending to be possessed by Chucky. And it's just like, as an actor, to just navigate, like, who am I right now? Like, which persona am I doing in this moment? It's just like, it takes so much talent. And I'm just looking at her filmography here. Because I'm like, what else has she done? I've like she's obviously done work, but she's hasn't really done anything huge outside of this franchise. She was in Tenet, which I never saw. So I have
to see that. Okay, cool. I never saw it either.
Playing a character named Wheeler. But yeah, she's Wheeler. But yeah, she's phenomenal. She has range,
Yes. Because she also, not only did she play Nika pretending to be Chucky, but also arguably Chucky pretending to be Nika. So it's like, how good is Chucky supposed to be at pretending to be Nika and behaving all, and, please just don't let him hurt me. Hey, Tiff. It's amazing. Yeah. But then, okay. I loved when Chucky met Glenda in the flashback through Nika and the conversation that was there. I love the fact that it was established that Glenn and Glenda didn't discuss Chucky appearing to Glenda after, ever since that flashback happened. What was it, like 3 months earlier, 6 months earlier? I forget what the time was. It was a few months before they finally broke her out. I think it was 3 months before they finally broke out Nika. Yeah. But, so, I mean, it bespeaks like yes, there's this unspeakable bond, but there are still things that Glenda won't share with Glenn until maybe the time is right, Right. So I liked that. Okay, then I have to tell you, just a little story. I don't want to take up too much time because this is a long pod, but we're only halfway through. But okay, when Nika broke free and she was wheeling herself down that driveway, and Tiffany is screaming bloody murder. Even her face shows up on the video at the gate, at the front gate, screaming, no! It's full on camp, but it is so high octane. I am so exhilarated by that moment. I don't remember the last time a series got me to that level of like exhilaration. That's the only word I can use. Like, I was floating because Nika, and we've addressed this before in season 1, Nika has been through a ringer. She has lost everything. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, you realize there are like 4 floors lower you can fall. And you do. And then you think you've hit rock bottom. And then you fall another 4 floors. And so to see her being that close to freedom, I never wanted something more in my life than at that moment wanting Nika to just get on the other side of that gate. And when she did, I felt like a sports fan and my team was winning. And I just wanted to go, goal! Just shriek my lungs out in celebration. And then when she went up the ramp and got into this van, and then we see who's in the driver's seat. And it's Kyle. I let out a yelp scream, like a, ah! Like it was so loud. My mother was on the phone with a friend at the other end of the house. I didn't know this at the time, and they were discussing their ages. And her friend is turning 84 this year, and she no sooner told my mother this detail than all of a sudden I let out the yelp I just gave you. And she thought that was my mother yelping at the fact that she was 84. And I had to explain to my mother after I finished and she finished her phone call. Oh no, that was the series. She's like, Kyle. I knew you were. Yeah. No, but I can't tell her that. Because she hasn't seen the series yet, and I want her to see the entire saga, and she's finally kind of on board. But because she heard it, and she's like, I know you were watching your scaries and you got scared. I'm like, no. I wasn't scared. You're scared.
I just hear just like your friend is like, what's that noise? It's like, oh, it's Edward. He's watching his scaries. Yeah, exactly. I don't know, that's why your mom's voice now.
No, it's not at all.
He's just watching the scaries.
My mom's not from Haddonfield, but but no, I mean, like, I had
Edward, come get your lasagna and milk.
Yeah. Oh, God.
You better hurry or you're getting no custard.
Bad boys don't get custard. But anyway.
Halloween.
God, that movie. Halloween Hens is still... It's living rent-free in my head. In spite of all of its flaws. Maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it's not the worst.
Okay, well...
Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Kyle. What is your takeaway of the Kyle reveal?
I just wrote Kyle with a lot of exclamation marks, and right after that I just wrote, this is a soap opera with a lot more exclamation marks. And then Gina Gershon's shot Joe Pantoliano. That's all I wrote, but I just thought, like, this is a soap opera where you thought I was dead, but I'm not, kind of like review.
It's totally like the Kimberly Shaw of Melrose Place ripping the wig off.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, even here, I think we see that Kyle's like lost her ear or whatever had happened to her. But yeah, it just goes along. Yeah. It's the same batshit crazy, ironic soap opera nature of this season, where just like, we're going to do anything and you just have to accept it. It's just that's how it is. And I appreciate that about the season, but I think just the things that I mentioned, and especially when you call to the just like how down in the dumps the last episode was, because I feel like there's still residual energy from that after this. This is just sort of like this gem in the middle of all that with this episode. And then of course it's bookended by the sort of the live Chucky, because there's the whole bit where it's just like, this is my show, but I'm not really in this episode, so I'm gonna do this for you. And then and then he kills what's her name?
The wrestler.
I don't
know her name. Liv Morgan?
Yes, that sounds right. And because there's the whole thing where he reveals to the audience like who killed who, essentially,
right,
in the whole episode, and because she's like sort of like, oh, it was Sutton, and he's just like, no, you're not paying attention, and and I guess, like, did she actually, like, she was on a podcast in real life and was just like, oh, I want Chucky to kill me. And then, like, obviously, like, Don Mancini somehow got a hold of that. He's just like, I want her on my show, and I'm gonna write it in, and you're gonna die.
You're gonna get your wish. Yeah. We're gonna appeal to. I mean, it also arguably for it to happen in like the gayest episode of the season.
Yeah.
She's
she's got the Chucky striped socks on and everything.
The sleeves and everything. Yeah. So yeah, maybe it was just a little something for the Midwest straighties. I don't know, because it was wrestling.
Yeah.
And she was scantily clad and beautiful.
You know what?
And he killed her.
What I've discovered is that like there are some gays who love wrestling.
That's yeah. I mean, I used to back in the day when it was still WWF. I used to watch.
What is it now? It's WWE.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't even know what that stands for.
World Wrestling. Because it was Federation. It was Federation.
Yeah, I know.
The Expedition. It's Star Trek, you know.
Continuing mission.
Yeah.
To explore new life forms. But no, my sister started getting back into it, and she found out that it's a big soap opera over there too. Because basically, the children of all the wrestlers I watched are now wrestlers themselves. Yeah. So.
Okay, let's try to get along through this because we're still halfway through. But our next episode is doll on doll. Doll on doll.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to I'll just get this out of the way because this is again part of my problem where we missed an episode with this storyline because we were with Jennifer Tilly. But we had this setup of the ripped Chucky, if you will, at the end of that episode. And it's another plot point that's just completely thrown out the window just as soon as it starts. And I think this and then having like the cliffhanger of season 1 ends abruptly, like that's what I was annoyed by, because it's like here's something that's interesting and was introduced like at the end of 2 episodes ago, and we've been waiting to see where this goes, and it's just like, oh, it was just sort of like it just became as irrelevant just as soon as it showed up.
And see, I was relieved because I was like, oh, thank God we don't have to live with this much longer. You know,
I mean,
I didn't want to see good Chucky get his ass kicked because the way it was set up, it looked like the ripped Chucky was going to pummel the shit out of good Chucky, and I didn't want that. So the fact that we didn't get that made me happy.
No, that's neither here nor there for me.
Zach just rolled his eyes. For those of you listening,
that is neither here nor there for me. If you're gonna like develop a storyline, like see it through. Don't just like give me something that you're going to that's going to be thrown out. And I guess like that's not true because like the ripped Chucky, I don't think he's completely discarded in this episode because he's kind of crucified to the wall, and then this is where Ruth comes in and she sees the face of
right.
the Lord and Savior in the doll.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of it's just like we're introducing all these Chuckies and they're being taken out of commission because at this point they're kind of the storyline is that there aren't very many Chuckies left. There's after the bus crash, it's the Child's Play, the good guy doll is a rare like item to find, and there's like literally in the entire world there's only like 5 left. And we'll get to the other episodes, but it just felt like, okay, well, what's happening? They're just being they're introduced and then they're just being discarded. So there was a lot more that I wanted. Like if you're telling us that there's not a lot of Chuckies left, don't give me a new Chucky and then just kill them off if they're an endangered species, you know?
Well, okay, I disagree. But...
Well, again, and it's the craziness, it's the soap opera element because it's like
it is.
They can say that there's only like one Chucky left in the world, but like there'll be a twist that'll show up and be like, oh, but there's another one, and which is exactly what happens. But it's like, but don't toy with me, you know? Toy, yeah, like just,
as it were,
yeah.
No, but I have much more of an affinity for what follows with Lexi detoxing and Nadine. Kind of like talking her down off of this high, like, while she's clutching the pills and everything, and tells her, I wrote the quote, if you don't quit while you're ahead, you're going to die. And then she tells her the gerbil story about her mother, which couldn't have been more, for me, perfect as a means to connect with Lexi, who, number one, hates her own mother but has lost her father, who was the only person who ever seemed to be even partially on her side. So she can relate to this parental loss and to this sense of being orphaned. But and also, I don't know, there's something about feeling like you represent the loss for someone who cares a lot about you, who you're really starting to care about as well, to realize that they lost someone to addiction and they don't want to lose you too. I don't know, it's so palpable is a word I probably overuse on this pod, but it's the only one I can think of right now. It is palpable. It's something that is kind of like so firmly rooted in a reality that I understand intuitively, that I really, again, Nadine really happening for me in this particular instance. So I don't know, you got anything to say about that?
No, not really. I figured that you would be no, I figured you would really respond to that, because that's kind of like again, it's more of like the melodrama, but it's just like the recovery bit. And like I said before with like the first episode, like, you know, I like Lexi, like the actress whose name again is Olivia Allen Lind. Like, she's the strongest performer, like of the kids, like of just like the main cast there. And I just felt like the material that she was given here was it just felt so basic to me, like this season, like the recovery thing. And I'm not saying that the story or just like the idea of it is basic. I just felt like it was rushed. A lot of it felt like it's just like, we're gonna do it. The same sentiment of what I said is just like, it felt like a lot of the season was kind of made up as it went along. And not to say that this storyline was made up as it went along, but it was just sort of it was sort of, and I don't want to say an afterthought, but it was just sort of sandwiched in wherever they could put it. So I kind of tuned out for a lot of it, because I knew where it was going. Like, I had seen it the first time. I kind of had an idea of where it was going. And once I had already seen it on the rewatch, it was just like, okay, let's just get through this shit.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We did also, it's okay. It's okay. Your experience is your experience. It's nothing to apologize for.
I know, but I sometimes I feel bad for you.
We do. No, you're not affecting my experience. But I already had it. But we do have the good fortune also that we're back to kind of like, you know, a little of this storyline, a little of that storyline, because we return to Tiffany discussing with Glenn, you know, basically the predicament, because Glenn wants answers and Tiffany wants answers. She says, I wrote down the line, I'm not saying anything until you tell me where Glenda took Nika. And did you notice Glenn's twitch? Glenn did a little clink, clink, clink right there. And I was like, oh, again. Like,
they were both doing it throughout the season.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Just little hug from, maybe not baby Jesus, but if I still were a practicing Catholic, it'd be baby Jesus. Yeah. But also just like Glenn and Glenda having recurring nightmares too, like I think I mentioned before, but they're going on here, and the fact that they keep texting each other, like, you know, like, did you have the dream? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, oh, I'm eating it up. I'm eating it up with a spoon. This is also the point though, where I started to realize, I think it's always been a truth with this series, but the sheer volume of flashbacks we get when people mention something that happened in the past, we oftentimes don't just get it mentioned. We get like anywhere from like 5 seconds to maybe 9 or 10 seconds of like context from even the movies, you know, like, or last season or whatever. The last time, you know, this happened on Chucky, here it is. And without a voiceover. But I mean, it started to feel like the second act of Jawbreaker for me. And that's not a criticism, but I mean, there gets a point where we're flashing back to something that happened 10 minutes ago, you know? And, because like there's the Boy Wonder flashback I just forgot his name. Jake. Oh my God, I'm sorry, Jake. As Jake is kind of like relating to good Chucky. Okay, I have. Should I ask you now? No, I won't ask you now. I'll ask you later. I have a question for you, but I'll ask it later.
Well, no, just ask me now because you've built it up too much.
Because we find out in another episode, but basically, like, okay, or not even find out. We don't really. Okay. How trustworthy did you believe good Chucky was? How much time did you spend being suspicious of him? How much time did you spend buying it?
I was on Team Devon Evans and I guess Team Lexi because they're just like the minute, like they should not have even kept him there. Like they should have destroyed him right away. It's just this whole mentality, like we need to know what he knows. It's just like, no, he has purposely been put there for whatever reasons. If you think that there's someone else out there, you're not going to get information. And if he's like, that's the thing. He's such a master manipulator, Chucky, that there's no, I mean, obviously I think that the setup was that good Chucky literally was, you know, like I'm not disputing that, but you know that he still has that in him. He could go back anytime, and it's a liability to keep him around. And this is where like a lot of more of that sort of the Jake Devon Evans dynamic came back, where it's just like the unnecessary drama, because I guess it was set up more so with the conversation that Jake has. I don't think it was this episode. It might have been with Sister Catherine of just like, you know, like sometimes you have to forgive, you know, not only yourself, but like the people that did you wrong or whatever. And it just like, built up this, again, very inorganic situation where Jake is now going to not only just be trusting of good Chucky, but really like take him under his wing and protect him and guide him. It's almost like Chucky became the new, what was the kid's name? Gary. And I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like something that Jake would do just based on like the experiences that he's had through the movies. Like this is like a doll that's so the face of the thing that killed his father, you know, just like all these people like in his life that I felt more connected to like Devon and just like his side of things. It's just like, no, like this is like you're being irrational. And he was. And that's why like it was just like, what are you doing, Jake? This entire season.
See, I understood. No. See, this is if we ever came in contact with Chucky and, you know, detoxed him or whatever, like programmed him, brain bleached him, I would be in the Jake position as far as the argument is concerned, just because I thought if this is true, if we have succeeded and if we truly have reformed this life, it is now a life. It is something. Like, we don't kill people, we kill the bad ones, you know? Like, the ones who are meaning to do us harm or who want to, like, you know, invade the world, who want to take it over, who want to, you know, just, like, you know, be terrible, horrible, destructive people and traumatize us, and that's what they capitalize on, then I understand why we need to bring them down. Yeah. But why do we need to bring down the ones who mean us no harm? Now, the thing is, I wasn't as gung-ho as early as Jake was, but I did, if I were in the room with those people, I feel like I would have been one of those people like, but what if, you know, like either way, what if he's faking, but also what if he's not, you know? But I didn't I didn't really count on what ended up happening, which we'll get to in a second. But you brought up Devon Evans. One thing I was really grateful for in this episode is when, not this part, but when Father Bryce like kind of like confines him to a pew and has him read the Bible, and he tells him what to read. And he starts reading about homosexuality as a sin and everything like that. And I just thought it was so punk rock when Devon just starts pulling those pages out and just chucks the Bible at the altar and everything like that. I was like, again, applauding, you know, and not like not even in a punk rock way, but in a like my spirit is taking flight.
Oh, Devon Evans, you're so punk.
You're so punk rock.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this leads to Jake obviously baptizing the doll. Like that.
Yes!
This is the no. Like this is the shit that I was just like, I don't want to see. I was more interested in, again, like the Devon and Lexi stuff because they're being proactive here. They're just like, let's go. They're wanting to get shit done. They're wanting to get answers because they know that this is a dead end with this Chucky thing. This is stupid. And as we find out later, it was. But that's when they go into the woods and because I want to get through this episode quickly. We get to the shack. And is this the episode where we find out that Dr. Mixter is in league with Chucky? Or was that already established earlier? See, that's the thing. Like, I just always assumed.
We find out.
I assumed she was evil from like the end of season 1, so that's why I could never remember where we like actually found out that she was.
But we didn't know that she was like in league with Charlie, as she calls him. But we didn't know that she was like his childhood therapist. All of that comes up like later, but we just know that she's in the cabin talking to the bald Chucky,
the Colonel.
And the Colonel, as Andy is laying there all Jesus-y.
I got more like Charles Manson from his appearance.
Oh, I totally thought Jesus, and I thought it was funny. But
it was very Jesus, but he was looking.
But I totally dug that Jake and Nadine got a point to bond over as they were becoming godparents to good Chucky. Yeah. I don't know. I wanted Nadine to kind of find a way into the group, and the fact that she was forging a little bond with Jake here, and the innocence of it, and the fact that they weren't doing it just because they believe. In the dogma or the religious practices or anything like that, but that they have to do it in order for him to be cleansed and stuff. Yeah. Just mythology wise, or if you want to call it, as far as the lore requires, all of that. Like I'm down for it. I thought it was kind of cool.
Fair enough. But then on the other side of the episode with Jennifer Tilly. Because this is again like more of the stuff that I love, because again it's Tiffany in this another predicament, a new predicament where you have Meg asking her just like, oh, do you remember like yada yada yada, and
the Dean brothers.
Tiffany could literally just be like, I forgot, or like she could just make up any reason as like, I don't really remember that, but she's so like nervous about the whole thing, like she's getting paranoid and desperate, that we then discover that Jennifer Tilly is still alive. That was probably like my biggest shock of the season, and I loved it.
Okay. I just wrote Tiffany Baby Janed Jennifer Tilly in doll form with all these exclamation marks.
She's Baby Janing a lot. Like
she really is. It's like her
a
thing
Baby
now.
Jane. Yeah.
It's her thing now. Yeah. But she the fact that that poor Jennifer Tilly has been alive this whole time, because even though she says and switch at the end of Seed of Chucky, so I know they're supposed to switch, but I always assumed that because she took wasn't it the axe in the head, and then fell down and said be better than your parents, especially your dad. I assumed that like she died, but apparently she just had to have it sewed up. I love that there's stitches over her axe wound in her forehead, and that poor Jennifer Tilly has been living in a bird cage,
a giant bird
for
cage.
How many? 18 years. 18 years. Oh my God, that means like at the end of Seed, when Jennifer Tilly's throwing that birthday party, and she's sitting there with the Chucky doll or the Tiffany doll telling all the kids like a story and everything like that. Poor Jennifer Tilly is locked somewhere in the basement of that mansion while horses are being ridden by children and cotton candy and whatever. Yeah. Oh my God, it's so sick. It is so, but it's again, the camp.
And we find out that like she's basically there to do all the accounting stuff.
Yeah.
Just keep up with like bills and stuff, respond to fan mail, and she's also been voicing Bonnie on Family Guy for 18 years to make more money for Tiffany. Like she's sitting in the cage. Tiffany just has a phone there, and you just like record your lines. The studio's on the other end.
But okay, and then she Jennifer Tilly gives her like a bogus story.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of like on her, and she's like, that bitch! And they're like, what is going on? And then another one of the most shocking things of the season happens when everyone makes the discovery in the basement, of course they do, that there is a doll in a cage that is alive, and that it is Jennifer Tilly, and that she gets to make contact with Meg Tilly and tell her the truth about what's going on. And then poor
In
Meg
doll
Tilly.
form.
Yes, and then poor Meg Tilly gets killed. And oh my God, I was like, this is off the rails. This is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me, and the most traumatizing thing that has ever happened to me regarding a Tilly. And then, oh my God, okay, this is what I want to address before we move on. Tiffany giving Glenn their doll form, because I knew when Tiffany pulled out that box, I'm like, it's Glenn. It's the original Glenn doll. It's shitface, you know? And during the disclosure, I just start to see this. It's not an evolution. It's actually more like a return to, especially after all of the madness that we enjoyed so much in season 1, especially. I feel like I got a return to the Tiffany that I really love. Like the one who loved Chucky through and through in Bride of Chucky and had a quiet broken heart. The one who slapped Glenda when Glenda was raving, when they were both in doll form in Seed. And then Glenn comes back with tears in their eyes and realizes that, you know, Glenn's been doing drag as Glenda, you know, and there's just this shock between the dolls, between little Glenn doll and little Tiffany doll, and there's just look of shock, you know, like that's enough, in a very maternal way, like, and because there is this emotional connection. So all of a sudden we're back to this genuine heart of Tiffany silently breaking apart this illusion she created about who she is, and finally giving the truth because she actually cares about her children. I'm just give it all to me. Give it.
Let's move on to episode 6.
Yes,
he has risen indeed. This one, I like.
This is where we learn.
Yeah, going through the episodes, this is where like it's all such a blur to me. So, flashback reveals after the truck crash that several of the remaining Chuckies, including the Colonel, dragged an unconscious Andy to captivity.
Right.
So yeah, that's where all that is dealt with. We find out what happens. Andy's been in the shack for a year.
Dr. Mixter was 8-year-old Charles Lee Ray's therapist at the school for wayward boys and all that.
And there's a lot of like backstory exposition that we have to go through just to catch up on things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sister Ruth anoints the ripped Chucky's feet. and so now it's established there's like a trinity of Chuckies. And then Father Bryce locks up all the children and meets Andy and decides to take
posing as a homeless
man, and so he decides, because that's what we do, we'll take pity on him, and Sister Catherine kind of takes the reins on that, thank God. And and then I just wrote Kyle and Nika slash Chucky, Kyle and Nika slash Chucky and Glenda, and I just put a bunch of hearts because they were all sitting around that table, and we learn, I think this is when we first really learn like what it is to bring Nika back after you cut your hand. It's really firmly established that Kyle punches Nika in the face, or punches Nika in the face to get Nika back, and Nika's just like, what the, ow, you always have to punch me. I don't know, that was a nice little refrain like thing that kept occurring over and over again. I wrote down a question because I was feeling a little tired of this too. Are Jake and Evan finally going to talk and resolve their differences? And I still don't know the answer to that question. Good Chucky killed the fly, which I thought was significant because, you know, we've alluded to the wouldn't even hurt a fly thing, and Good Chucky killed and didn't vomit. So we know that Good Chucky can be violent. Colonel made that comment, mind over muscle, every time. That was evoking memories for me of Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor in Superman the movie. Just mind over muscle is something Lex Luthor says to kind of like lord his power over Superman. And it was funny coming from a bald Chucky. Good Chucky. Okay, this was a question I had. What do you think motivated Good Chucky to give Lexi pills? Because this is the moment.
No, because that wasn't Chuck. Yeah. That was just regular Chucky. But he was.
You think that was regular?
He was coming
Chucky?
through. He knew what was going on. He was manipulating the situation at that point, knowing that they assumed he was Good Chucky. Because he was there, and there were like little nuances in the way that the lines would be delivered, because you could so tell that it was regular Chucky, but just putting on the Good Chucky.
Sure.
Kind
voice.
Of, yeah. The cadence of the Good Chucky. Yeah.
The disposition. The disposition. Yeah.
I don't know. This was another one. It just like, it all was just like, oh, we're at the school again. We're going through this shit. So,
but I mean, the pieces are starting to come a little bit closer together. Like, we know that, you know, our little team of Glenda, Nika, and Kyle are headed in that direction.
Was this.
Andy's already there, so I don't know.
I had one thing I was confused about. I guess it's not really a confusion because it was kind of made sense by the end. But when Dr. Mixture's on the phone at the end, I think it was with Kyle like had the phone, but it was just like gave it to Nika as Chucky. It seemed like, is this Fiona playing Nika pretending to be Chucky? Because it just like, it had like kind of a vibe about it like that. But then after she hung up, it's just like, you know, the whole thing, and then she got punched. I don't know. It felt a little weirdly like shot and all that. Like, they're just like, what's going on here? Are they? Is like who's in on the plan? What is the plan? What's going on here? But
it's so funny.
The thing that well, what annoyed me, because I guess this is where both the other Chuckies are really taken care of, because the ripped Chucky, you know, there's like this huge confrontation. Then it's just like, oh, arsenic, and okay, he's out of the picture. And then you're thinking, okay, here's the Colonel. The Colonel has been built up to be this like big, formidable force. Yeah. And then he's just he's killed off screen. Like, he dies on screen, but it's just like he comes in the door and just like has the monologue and then drops forward, and we can see that the scissors are in the back of his head. And just feeling like, how anticlimactic is that, of this mystery / character that's been built up this entire time only for Andy, who's like, you know, as far as I'm concerned, like, Andy is like the Laurie Strode of this franchise. And we're not even seeing him in action here. Like, he's just been so like sidelined for everything, that even like his big moments and his big defeats, or just like defeating of other things are off screen. So just like, okay, this is where things start to feel rushed, because I think getting into the next episode is where we're really like, you know, everything of the first 7 episodes is being resolved in that episode. That's episode 7 is really like the finale of the whole Lord Incarnate storyline, and the Jennifer.
Traditionally, yes. Yeah. It yes.
And I felt like at this point it was just like, we're going through the motions. We just gotta get there, and that's largely what this episode felt like until the very end, when there's Father Bryce realizes, and I think that this is like, you know, the switch, because like he's been a nuisance this whole season, but once like the thing finally is like becomes real, it's just like, oh, okay. And then it's just like, should we call the cops? Like, no, we call the Vatican.
But see, okay, this is the thing. Like, we're already like, you know, at batshit, like, you know, beyond 88 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And so like we're going back in time, and as it were, like I mean like the lightning striking and the action, the shit's hit the fan.
Yeah.
And all I will say about this episode, and then we can move on because there's not much to say. This one is probably just slightly over like episode 3, but there were things that I liked about it though. But like I kind of like the fact that the Colonel was built up to like be this big formidable thing, but because I never found him particularly interesting, I was glad that he got disposed of, because I was like, good. I don't. That's not Chucky. I want Chucky. And the Colonel, what I couldn't wrap my head around what that voice was that annoyed Fiona Durham so much that Brad was doing for the Colonel. I kept trying to place it. Maybe one day I will, or I'll see an interview.
I think it was supposed to be like an Apocalypse Now reference.
But I wouldn't get that. I still haven't seen Apocalypse.
I've never seen it either. That's just what she had said.
Okay. But no, it evoked something for me, but I haven't nailed down what that is yet. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, because there's even like the trumpets. It was like kind of like reliving the PTSD of like
and they're like in a tent
war.
And
yeah,
that is a messed up like breadcrumbs of body parts leading up to that tent too. Fuck me, or the cabin, whatever it was. Felt like a little bit of both, but I will say at the end of the episode, I just wrote I legitimately believed Good Chucky was for real, and I thought that he at the end of this episode that he had been faking the entire time, and I'm like, whoa. Then I realized in the next episode, episode 7, going to the chapel, as the episode progressed, I realized, okay, I wasn't wrong to believe that Good Chucky was a real thing. I was wrong to rely on it, because it's still Chucky. It's still corruptible. That seed, as it were, will still break out of its kernel. It's kernel.
Oh my god, I hate you so much. Basically,
and thrive as Charles Lee Ray. If you let it live long enough.
Yeah,
and that was really disappointing.
You could have said it ripped out of its kernel.
But nice.
I think this is more just the case of you being the movies, or in this case, the show's bitch.
The show's bitch,
because there was always, I knew that he was going to be corruptible. People always be like, you didn't know that, or I'd be like, oh, I knew that person was going to be the killer. You didn't know. I'm like, yes, I did. Come on,
I liked him so much.
That's fair.
I just liked Good Chucky, and I still, when I revisit the series or the season, Good Chucky is one of my favorite things to behold.
Okay, and then the last thing we can really say about because you jumped ahead, but the last thing we can say about He Is Risen Indeed, episode 6 is obviously we get Nadine thrown off the bell tower.
Yes.
Is that okay? So is that a Psycho 3 reference?
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
I could have sworn there was like a short clip of Psycho 3 alongside Psycho 2 with the Thing and with what they
maybe
were
is all
programming
universal
when they were reprogramming. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised.
He just sort of got he got the reference and then used it later on.
Well, because it was also a reference in Psycho 3. It was a reference to, wasn't it a Hitchcock movie?
Vertigo.
Vertigo with the nun.
But but I don't think it wasn't a nun. Well, the nun was in Psycho 3.
The nun in Psycho 3. Yeah. But like the fall, like the falling in the belfry, or what, as it were. But so I don't know. I hate thinking of it like that, because I was really legitimately struck by the death of our sweet little redhead. I didn't want. I don't know. It was a death that actually hurt me. Like and the fact that there was like a going on after it happened, I was like, it's again one of those things where it's like you remember that this killer that you love, you also hate.
I think that where you said earlier how you didn't particularly grow attached to Gary, but you felt upset for Jake afterwards. I think this is the point in the series where this was like my entry point to Lexi, because even though I found like the whole bit of her like withdrawal and Nadine like being there to comfort her, like I found that kind of trite. I still, at least like throughout the season, they did set up that relationship really well of them, because at first
Yeah.
Lexi was kind of like annoyed by Nadine, and she'd just be like,
Yeah.
you ask too many questions and
Yes.
yada yada yada. But then they slowly kind of became friends, and it made sense, because it just like, just given who Lexi is and just like what we've seen of her, that this is someone who would become her friend. And because they're just like that she could glom onto like that outcast aspect of her personality. And I think that this is the point where actually like it was the access point for Lexi in the season, where just like the whole withdrawal thing, like I wasn't on board with that, but just finally kind of getting her to grieve her friends, now that we're getting into going to the chapel, like that was fine. And and we're also still dealing with the withdrawals in that sense too, because then she gets the visions of Nadine as like the was it like the fairy from Pinocchio? I could not tell.
Oh, I just thought she was an angel.
I guess so.
Religion.
I watched the blue fairy or the blue angel, but
No, I mean Mary wore blue. I don't know. Maybe
sure,
angels wear
whatever.
blue.
Yeah.
I don't know. She was all lit up too. It was the design on her costume. I was all about it. I was like, it was so kind of like still kind of like traditionally religiously like I don't know, beautiful, I guess, but it was also quirky, like the way Nadine, of course Nadine's gonna look like an angel like that, like something she would have like drawn an angel in preschool or something like that. And I really loved that exchange between her and Lexi too, because I just felt like, is Lexi gonna use again, and is she gonna break up her trio? Is she gonna even try to commit suicide or anything like that? And the fact that Nadine was this visage that could be there for her, I was weeping. I was really moved by it. In addition to that, we get, you already alluded to it, Father Bryce is going to be an exorcist. and it's all kind of introduced at the top, because we also get this, what I thought worked really, really well for this episode, this motif of the confessional,
right,
with all of the characters revealing where they are at that particular moment and what it means to them. And I was confused by Jake's confession at the top, where he was kind of, I thought he was lying and trying to kind of like gaslight Father Bryce, because I didn't realize what was happening yet, because we hadn't gotten the reveal that Father Bryce was actually, trying to help. I thought he was lying and saying, basically saying, no, I did it all, like I'm responsible for it. But when really, I guess what he was doing was confessing, I feel that I am responsible for every one of these deaths. Like, it's not Chucky, it's me, kind of thing, which is going to be interesting to watch through those eyes the next time I see this episode. Also introducing that Tiffany has to switch again. She wants to be in doll form because Jennifer Tilly's on the lam.
Was that was in this episode, right?
Yeah, that was in this episode.
Yeah, cool, because I was getting the callback to Bride of Chucky, where the friends, the gay friends, remember, it's just like steps out into the highway and gets hit by the truck, and just like the explosion. Because it's just like, okay, that's one way to deal with Jennifer Tilly and doll form.
But the difference being that Jennifer Tilly chose that path. Like she didn't want to live anymore. She didn't want to go to jail. Like Tiffany was telling her, you've been a prisoner for 18 years. This is nothing. Prison's going to be a cakewalk for you, whatever the line is. But
well, I love even Tiffany in like the restaurant when she's getting the takeout, and they're just like, aren't you just like, no, and it's just like, oh, I loved you, and I'm like, thank you. No, it's I get confused with her all the time. Just more of like that's all I want to see, is just Tiffany in Jennifer Tilly's body, just put into the most awkward scenarios ever and try to navigate her way out of them. Like I would just watch that. I mean, I would want everyone else, but I just like, that is the soul of this show. That is like, just give me that and I'll be so happy.
But I mean, I also appreciated when we got back to the church, because that followed this, seeing Chucky in a Hannibal mask for many reasons. But ultimately, because good Chucky is in my eyes now, of course, no longer reliable. And I love that they pull out the exorcism for dummies, because Father Bryce has been excommunicated for calling the archdiocese at the Vatican and trying to get, I guess, permission to perform the exorcism. So now he's an outlaw. And all of a sudden, after 6 episodes, well, we don't see him until the beginning of 2. So I guess after 5 of 6 episodes, all of his screen time, Father Bryce has been a pest, oppressive, indoctrinating, I don't know, softly malicious, and I don't know, just all of these adjectives, all the bad stuff. He's just been bad, nothing but bad person coming from him. He was a real strong contender for the cherry picker for those episodes. But then all of a sudden this episode happens, and I gotta say, I wrote this note. Okay, so now that Father Bryce has been excommunicated, he's hot and a badass because Devon Sawa like takes his shirt off and just gets like this backlit kind of like look at my pecs kind of shot, and then he's like getting ready for the exorcism, and now he's like kind of like getting ready to be in the trenches and fight the war, and seems like a guy who you'd want like on your team and stuff. And it's like, now you're a team player, now like you're interesting. And because even because that already, just the energy, the shift in his energy from being this oppressive figure of authority, struggling to control everyone, now actually helping, that alone was more interesting than anything he had done up until this point. And it only got more interesting.
I don't want to say that he wasn't interesting, but he was just stifling the storyline with who he was. He wasn't a non-interesting character, but this definitely made him more interesting, and it helped make this episode more dynamic for sure.
He wasn't a welcome presence, let's put it that way for me. Like, I wasn't like, oh, there's Father Bryce. No. Never.
And the thing is, you don't have to be, because I agree with you, he wasn't a welcome presence. And that's not to say, like, you can still be like a villain and be a welcome presence, like a Tiffany.
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's just like, I think I enjoyed, like, Devon Sawa got more to do in this season, like, even though he played like the twins in the first season, but I felt like his role as like the fathers, like the dads in season 1 was just very minimal. Like, he was just kind of there, but it was like he felt more effective to the story, whereas like here in this season, it, like you said, he wasn't bringing anything. Like, he wasn't making the story interesting. He was just sort of like, that role could have been filled by Sister Ruth. It's just like she could have been the one being the authoritarian and all that stuff. So yes, he like finally shows up in like his best episode, and then is exploded with his head flying in here, with then just like them putting like the little towel over it. the end there.
Well, because that's another thing. Like, since we're cutting to him exploding, before he exploded, he went into the confessional himself, and his confessor was Sister Catherine. Perfect choice. And the only nun on hand anymore now, because Sister Ruth is like behind closed doors doing up to no good. Mm-hmm. Sister Elizabeth is long dead. So, but I was so happy to see the camera on both of them during his confession, and arguably his outing of himself. I that's how I perceived it. It wasn't spelled out, but the fact that he talked about trying to control everyone when he himself has always been different, and that's as far as he goes. And the way Sister Catherine receives that information, I feel like she goes the same place I go. And
interesting.
I don't know, it just kind of,
I'll have to watch.
Yeah, that's where I went.
I'll have to watch that again.
It was because also another thing that I really appreciated, like, I mean, as a student of acting for many years, and a person who loves to watch interactions and watch both sides of the table, I love the person talking, but I love the person listening. and just watching her listen to his confession and watching tears stream down her face effortlessly. Like there's no pin in her hand. She's not trying to cry. She's not wrenching her emotions like a towel. She's just letting the moment, guide her. Mm-hmm. And she's just listening with an open heart. And this man is bearing his soul to her. And for the first time, she's hearing what she probably always wanted to believe was at his core. Yeah. And to know that it really is, and to see her receive that. Oh, and then for her to tell him when he wants to know what his penance is, she says nothing. And she doesn't say this, but because I feel like on a subliminal level, it's like, because the things that you think are the most wrong with you aren't what's wrong with you. You don't have to do penance for these things that you feel you need to hide. And I was too kind of like spellbound by the theatricality of his explosion to be emotionally connected to it. It was more kind of like if anything. Yeah, but it was also just like watching fireworks.
Yeah, it sucked, but at the same time, it was just like his story was over.
It was also more like, damn! Yeah, it was more like that.
Because we got more stuff with Glenda, and just like talking to, or Glenda, I guess in this case, with Chucky. And and here's another. This is my issue, because I like Sister Ruth. Like I mean, I don't like her. Like you love to hate her or whatever. You feel sorry for her. She's the middle child, but just the handling of her story. Because this is where I've said like it felt like things were just made up as they went along. Because if you're going to tell me that this entire character's through line was to stall Dr. Mixter and Chucky for just like a few seconds more so they can do what they had to do, just so she can get a knife thrown in her eye, and that's it. Like it felt so contrived. Again, it was just one of those things that was set up just to be a throwaway bit of her coming in there with the gun. Like this is a storyline and a character that could have been developed so much better than it was. And just like the Colonel and the ripped Chucky and the driving the cliff off at the beginning with like the Tiffany doll, like it was all these things that were set up that were interesting. These were the interesting things that were just thrown to the wayside. So that was kind of the last bit. And then it makes me think, like, how was this written? Like, did they know at the end that it was going to come to this and then we have to do things backwards? Or did they just say, well, now we need this to happen, so who's left? Who's expendable that we can, like, do this? And I don't want to talk about this for so long because we're on forever. So if you want to just, like, quickly throw your 2 cents in there about that.
Okay, all I can say is a completely different experience because my focal points were different than yours. What I was focusing on at that particular, what preceded that moment, I was just like, yes, Andy and Jake, because they had coordinated to know enough not to hand over the Chucky doll. But then fuck Sister Ruth because she's throwing a wrench in the works. But what that moment with Glenda throwing the knife in her eye, what I loved about that was, again, like, we've got Glenda, who we know has been conflicted just off of their, like, exposure, like this whole season, about being a killer and about, is this something I want to access? And we keep seeing little teases of it here and there that are very, very softly alluded to. And finally, in a moment where they needed a killer, Glenda stepped the fuck up and used young Charles Lee Ray's knife that Chucky told them was buried, like in a special place and everything like that, undug it because there's still a link to Chucky, to the father of Glenn and Glenda, that Glenda feels. So I love that they dug up the knife with the little CLR initials on it. I loved that it ended up, I thought that moment was enough for me because I was just like, look at you making your instinct to kill a superpower. We know how I love that. But we've talked about it enough with Sam as Ghostface in Screevy. So spoilers for Screevy, sorry guys. I also just thought, like, the whole, I'll just wrap everything up. the last confessional that or one of the last confessionals, I think, well, one of them is Andy, and then I think the last one is Dr. Mixter. But the Andy's just saying, I haven't thought about my future since the first grade. I felt that. I felt like I've seen you consumed by this hunt your entire life, and even Kyle has been questioning you about it, but you haven't really expressed anything about it, and now you're finally reflecting on who are you without Chucky. Loved that.
Yeah. I have a question.
They did the... Yes.
I mean, obviously soap opera, so it's just like probably not. But
yes.
if this is the last time that we see Andy and Kyle, because there is a sense of finality to the storyline, because it just kind of bookended from their first exit back in Child's Play 2. Like, would you be upset if
cried.
This is the... Oh, I got misty as well, for sure. But
I was insane.
Would you, if this was the end for them... not the end, but just like the if this was the last time we saw them, would you be satisfied?
I don't know.
Because well, if you don't know, can I say what I know?
Yes, please.
Because I kind of we talked about this a bit, or like I expressed this in the first season, and it felt like fuck, I don't know why. Alex Vincent. I don't know why I blanked on that. And
yes.
Christina Lees. Like, I know that she's been acting for a long time. She's been in the industry forever. But she's definitely like playing a character with Kyle. Whereas with Alex Vincent, like, he's not like, he was a child actor. He didn't really play with it for you know, his life. You know, he had other careers and stuff going into it. Now he's obviously revisiting the role and embracing the fandom and all of that. But because he has such a limited presence, especially of what we saw in Curse and Cult, it just feels like, you know, it's just like I don't know if he wasn't comfortable, or just like, you know, like, we're just going to give you what you can give us. That there isn't really anything left for them. Like, you know, obviously we're not going to get like a big Jamie Lee Curtis finale, of like, you know what I mean, of just like a big showdown at any point. That's never gonna happen, because it doesn't feel like it wouldn't be cinematic. It wouldn't be a big spectacle. So it felt like here he wasn't really important. Like, that's why I said with the last episode where he you know, he had his kill off screen of the Colonel. That just like the story is not focused on him or any of this. So it felt like, to me, like them just sort of being these spectators and looking at the kids and just being like, you know, what do you think's going to happen with them now? And they're like, you know, I think that they've got a better shot than we did. That could very well be like the end of them, because it's just like, realistically, what else could they do of like bringing them back to just kind of like rinse and repeat and go through like the same story beats and not kill them off? Because it's sort of like the Scream franchise at this point. Like, you risk every time you bring back a Sydney, a Gale, and a Dewey, like, you know, if they're just there, you know, not that this is the same scope of franchise or characters, but just like you bring them back and it's just like, you don't do anything to them, then it's just like, well, what was the point? And then you do something to them and it's just like, oh, that was heartbreaking. Like, why would you do that? Why couldn't you just let them, you know, live in peace? So I have conflicting feelings, because it does feel like that was it. It was bookended with them, you know, even did the flashback, the thing you talked about, showing us the final moments of Child's Play 2. So, I mean, if we never saw them again, I don't think I would be upset about it, but I'm always going to have this sense of it's never going to be complete with Andy. Like, he's never going to get his big Laurie Strode showdown. And I don't even know at this point if that's what I want. Like, I would rather just Chucky show up for infinity, for like as long as I'm still alive, and just like always be a movie or a television show that comes out. So I don't even know what to say about that.
I mean, at this juncture, Laurie Strode has had so many final battles with Michael Myers and as far as like the finality of them, like, I mean, beyond like, you know, the initial two movies, I mean, when they try to make it like a final battle, none of them has ever felt right to me, ultimately. So if this were the last I saw of Kyle and of Andy, in this saga, I can't say I'd be disappointed because I wept. And I got those kids that I wanted back. I didn't know it was coming either. When they came out through that big warehouse door, and they were just the little ones, you know, and I didn't even know what I was crying about. I just think it was just like, I've spent so much time with you, and you know, I remember. I can't even articulate what I was feeling. I just know I was feeling it. So I wouldn't be upset about it. But that said, I'm at this juncture willing to take whatever Don Mancini is willing to offer me.
I guess the thing that just like that kind of upsets me about it is just how Andy is sort of undermined here, because he does get to have his big finish here in his mind of killing Chucky, but then, you know, there's the twist at the end where we find out that, or I guess at the beginning of the next episode. Well, it's right. Spelled out to us in the end when we see Dr. Mixter doing the Chucky laugh. We know that he's transferred. We don't find out and see exactly how it played out until the beginning of the last episode. But it almost felt like, okay, here's Andy. You gave him this big moment, and it's almost like, you know, when we talk about Valentine, like Marley Shelton's character, like the final girl by default, where just like, I don't feel your final girl energy because you didn't know. You thought you killed the killer, but you're actually embracing the killer right now, and you had the wool pulled completely over your eyes. And that's how I feel with Andy in this moment. So it's like, if this is the last time we see Andy, it's just like, that's what you sent him out on, is to like have him kill, like think that he's, you know, saved the day and did have his final hurrah with Chucky. Like that's what upsets me, and that's why it did feel very final. But it's just like, but now it's like you have to have him come back because you totally undid it.
No, but you can't ever defeat evil. You can only ever keep it abated. No, it's true. And I mean, and that's what got me into the slasher, you know, craze to begin with, is the fact that like the evil always comes back.
Sorry, but I just want to cut you off because I get that. Okay. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, he wasn't killing Chucky. He was killing Dr. Mixter.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And he thought it was Chucky. He thought it was Chucky.
Which
so
is why
sit
I'm
with
not
that.
saying,
Sit
like,
with that.
Yeah, but which is why I'm also saying, like, I wouldn't be upset if they brought them back, because maybe he still has to make amends. But if he left on this note, it was a beautiful note that I felt. So maybe it's somebody else's task now to take their life and devote it to making sure Chucky is snuffed out. And maybe they don't have to do it alone either. Anyway, last thing I'll say about this episode, and we'll move on. Just Glenn getting shot. Nika cannot get a break. She really can't. Oh my God. But we'll talk about it when we get there. Okay, I'm done.
Can I? Okay, just because you mentioned Nika, sorry to prolong going to the chapel a little bit longer, but I think one of my favorite moments is like after. I think it was like, I don't know if it was Father Bryce that like when he blew up or whatever, but then because Nika has the blindfold on and she's just like, what happened? Like, did it work? Or...
I can't see anything, guys. What happened?
Okay, but Chucky actually.
Yes. How did you feel?
I mean, like I said, like I liked season 1 of just like how it like built up to the finale, because we had the big show, you know, the family friendly PG horror movie fun with Chucky going around and stabbing everyone through the theater seats. And I think this was a good finale, but this felt like a continuation to episode 1, because episode 1 felt like it just kind of got cut off, and then we did the Lord Incarnate / Casa Tiffany for 6 episodes, and now we're back to, you know, like the suburban neighborhood home. We're back with like Caroline. Is it Caroline or Carolyn? Caroline. And it was like, okay, we're dealing with this shit, because I felt like there was still unfinished business. So I liked that. And I don't have any complaints about this. Like, I think that this is probably my favorite like regular episode in this season, just because it was dealing with a lot. And there was so many just like twists and everything in it. But I don't know, like I liked where it went. I didn't mind, again, because it was just like, and another Chucky doll, and another, because just we find there's another Chucky, one last one behind the safe, and then of course there's one more. And here's another question: was Belle always Chucky, or did another Chucky come back and switch places with the Belle doll after it was taken out of the Cross home by Tiffany and Caroline?
One thing I noticed from the introduction of the Belle doll was the fact that her eye makeup was much heavier than that of the Belle doll we saw back in Bride of Chucky. And when I first saw it, I thought like, oh, so they, sometimes they tweak things here and there. Sometimes they make little differences and everything. Like Chucky hasn't always looked the same either. Yeah. Now I think it's just Chucky in drag. The whole
He was literally, it was
season.
Like the contingency of just like, I'm going to stick it out here with Caroline the entire time and wait until
and also
my big
that's how he continued to like condition her and tell her over and over again, keep her on the track, so like she can be swayed, like in other directions, so he can like be put in the driver's seat, because that's what he does with kids who are susceptible for one reason or another. But I also, because he didn't just do it with her. One of the first things I wrote when we got the exposure as to like what exactly happened with Dr. Mixter and Charlie, I just wrote, so Chucky basically Harley Quinned Mixter, like because Joker was treated by Harleen Quinzel, as a therapist in DC, in Gotham, in Arkham Asylum, and I'm just like, and he basically recruited her, and I'm like, so did Chucky do the same thing for Dr. Mixter? Well, Dr. Mixter might have thought she was harnessing him and like making him a protege, or giving him like a lift when she was doing exactly just that, but she didn't realize she was doing it because she was being manipulated by him, because he's a master manipulator. He knows how to get inside people's heads and motivate them to do things that are in his best interest, not always theirs. So I thought that was fascinating, and that trauma was key. I appreciated that. We always appreciate that word on this podcast, trauma.
The trauma.
But
because they even have a moment where they're just like, are we going to end up like Andy and Kyle? I forget what they said exactly about them. It was just like two adults with no jobs or something like unemployed.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but I also just appreciated it was a Christmas episode. It was like Christmas with Chucky.
Well, Chucky actually, Love Actually.
Yeah, I got that. But and I thought of it when I first saw it. I was like, Chucky Actually, is that going to be? And then I saw the little holiday, Chucky, and I was like, oh, okay. But I liked. Oh, I just have a question about like Lexi in 12 Step sitting there in group, like sharing her experience, but Jake's like in the back, and I'm like, is it like Visitor's Day at Narcotics Anonymous? Like, what's going? I didn't understand that.
That was weird. I was just like, why is he there? And there was no reason for him to be there other than to like lean in, because it's just like, is he gonna like tell the secret?
Yeah.
Like it did not need to. He didn't need to.
She could have just.
Yeah.
She could have just done it, and maybe he could have like opened the door accidentally because he's like supposed to pick her up or something. Then slowly kind of just like listen because he thinks she's gonna sell. There's another way to do it, but whatever. I love that her mother's the monster though, that she, that's chasing her. Okay, and the fact that Glenn is not doing well after the gunshot wound, and that Glenda made the call to be. I always want to call him Pippin from Lord of the Rings. Billy, is it Bibbit? Is that his name? The voice? I can't remember the actor who does the voice for Glenn and Glenda.
Billy Boyd.
Billy Boyd. Yeah. That's what I want to call him. Billy Bibbit.
Gigi Valentine is what it's the voice of Gigi. Yeah.
Oh, so okay. So bringing again, it was kind of. Again, Don Mancini has this weird thing about writing why people speak in voices that they do. Yeah. And like, because it happened in season 1 with Tiffany's voice, where it's like,
now I screamed a lot. Oh, listen to my voice. Now I just talk like this.
I'm hoarse for the rest of my life. But and a similar thing happened, like, no, Mummy, now that I'm back inside this doll, I've always talked like this. It's like, no, you haven't. But
Well,
just a little.
it was actually they did a similar thing on Family Guy, where Stewie is like, he sees a therapist, and for whatever reason the therapist can understand him, like they're talking, even though he's a baby, and he's just like, he says something about just like, oh yeah, and like my British accent, and the therapist is like, I don't hear any British accent, and then you see Chucky's just like, or Stewie is like starts talking in his regular voice. We find out that the affectation, like the Britishness that we've heard from Stewie Griffin throughout like the entire series is not actually canonically his voice. And he's like, this is what I sound like, really? And he's like, oh my gosh, that feels so liberating. And then by the end, he realizes that he's revealed too much of his inner self to the therapist. And I don't remember if he has to kill him, but I think the therapist like has a stroke or a heart attack, and he doesn't give him like his medication and allows him to die. But it's just like a thing where just like, these characters will put on these airs or just like these fake accents. So I could see, I mean, it was a little jarring, like especially after we've spent so much time with Glenn and Glenda in their human forms, to now all of a sudden see Glenda as Gigi. Also, I just realized Gigi because Glenda.
You just realized that?
Yes. I was thinking like Gigi, like Gigi.
No. Oh my God. No, I got it instantly. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
anyway.
right. No, but I thought it was perfect, and I thought it was, I was very happy to get Glenn and Glenda, Gigi, back in essence, because I mean, like, it doesn't need to make sense. I love that character, but I also love seeing that character
made over.
Made over. But I mean, with hindsight now, like, also it seemed right, because like the bodies that Glenn and Glenda occupied in human form were never really theirs. They didn't steal them, but those bodies were stolen by the children who were born to Jennifer Tilly, and then flushed, Glenn and Glenda's souls into those children. So the fact that those bodies, it's a shame that they're dead now, but there was something incredibly poetic about just that shot of them laying next to each other, like in the hospital bed, and then reinfused in the body that they were born in. I thought that was tremendous. I thought I don't know, just powerful stuff. And off the wall, like, how do you? I don't know how you think things like this up. Not you, but how one does. You. No, because if you thought it up, it would have. There'd be strategy, and there'd be an arc, and there'd be it wouldn't be quite the chaotic piece that it is. I also love Tiffany's broken heart is back now because Gigi wants to travel alone, because Gigi is 18 and can be shipped places.
Gigi is a doll. Gigi can do whatever they want.
Exactly. But now Tiffany, again, like there's this pathos to Tiffany that I've been missing. That I'm glad for the wild and crazy and the outrageous and all that. But I really love my little Tiffany Valentine. The one who loves unrequitedly over and over again. Who's never going to find family that lasts, in a way that satisfies her. I love that. Then there's that whole gift giving thing with the professional podcasting bundle. I was like, guys, break up. Like you can't. I mean, already there was an irony to the fact that Jake receives a gift from Devon Evans, immediately feels prompted to leave to return a gift that Devon Evans no longer requires. And it takes him 2
days to do it, because I was keeping track, and he's just like, oh, where have you been?
And all the irony is all Devon wanted says to Jake as Jake is leaving, all I want, you are my Christmas present. All I want is some time together. And if Jake would have just spent that time, Jake would have learned that Devon Evans doesn't podcast anymore. So these two are completely out of touch. I love their affection. Like by the time they were sleeping on the floor together, you know, I was wondering, are you going to hook up? Like, what's happening? Are we going to lose our virginity
Just
like
in
on
like
Lexi's
Lexi's
floor?
bedroom.
She's a total flame dame. But I'm starting to wonder if I am going to root for them anymore, because it seems like the natural course of things. I thought I was going to have a broken heart if they ever broke up, but now I'm just kind of like, guys, maybe you're growing apart for a reason. Yeah. I mean, I think I said it in the season 1 pod. Teenage romance doesn't always, most of the time, does not last into adulthood and for the rest of your life.
I mean, they need to figure out something of what they're going to do with these characters, because this I cannot deal with another season of this melodrama, and I don't want to see. I don't know how long this show's going to last. I mean, we know that we're getting a season 3. We are. That could be the last one. I hope not, but it's, you know, it would be annoying if this show went for 10 seasons and they basically did like a Rachel Ross thing with them of the will they or won't they. We were on a break. I don't need to see like the entire run of this show just being, when are they gonna get back together? And because I don't give a shit, you know, just like you can have you don't need to. You can make characters and like characters who are in a relationship interesting by giving them other things. It doesn't need, you know, it doesn't need to just be that there's some sort of drama that's coming between them, or a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. Like they could go on adventures, they could solve mysteries, and that could be the thing that they thrive on. So, I mean, I hope that Don Mancini has like something better for them, because I'd hate if this is just, they keep going down this road of the trauma of just like how, you know, it's, you know, this is the only, because I think even Lexi says at one point in the season, it's just like the only thing that we're all bonded by is this Chucky. Trauma. So like we have nothing else in common, and I'd hate if that is kind of like the underlying thing with them. But anyway,
I would too.
That aside, we get
I love Lexi's apology to her mother. I loved that,
which she was surprised by.
Well,
I mean, and that's the thing that they because they don't quite redeem her, but she's at least redeemed to Lexi. There's at least like there's a connection there, that there's just like, okay, everything's gonna be okay, and then as soon as everything's okay, that's where we're gonna like kill people off. And well, because this scene is hilarious already, because it's just like you have Tiffany, desperate Tiffany, like going down to find the Belle doll, breaking into this house, and this is because this is what you were talking about earlier, that I thought it was funny that you were talking about the flashback to the thing in season 1 with like the murders in the theater, because what I thought was so funny was like when Michelle comes downstairs and she's just like, I'm calling the police, and like, Jennifer Tilly, oh my god, completely changes her tone, and she's like, do you remember me? Like we met like during the charity event, and just like, I know it didn't work out so well, but it's just like, oh, you mean the same charity event where your husband was murdered? Like I just loved it. Like the biggest takeaway from that, like there's no grief connected to that, but just the fact that she met Jennifer Tilly during that thing, like she's so starstruck by it.
I mean, that's the thing. That's why Michelle will never be redeemed. She will only be entertaining as fuck. And maybe every now and then, like in her dinner exchange with her daughter, she might be patient enough to just shut her mouth and listen when badgered by her daughter's friends. But or if she respects someone like Jennifer Tilly enough to listen to what they have to say and believe every fucking word, every fucking lie that comes out of their mouth. And then when Chucky kills Michelle, and then I loved Lexi leaping down and just
It was very primal.
sawing. Yeah, right. But just sawing Chucky, and that Tiffany doesn't care.
Well, no. But you skipped over a part that was funny because Tiffany's
What?
like, Chucky, how could you? Killing a mother on Christmas? And Chucky, of course, has to like point out the hypocrisy.
Right.
But there was also another funny line because she's like, Chucky, how are you still alive? If I had a nickel for every time I heard that.
It was so good. I was low. Again, this is like the kind of epilogue season finale episode that you don't often get, and I'm as gung-ho about it as I am for like the dreamy Buffy season.
Restless. Well, this episode does feel like it's just like a series of vignettes because it starts with like the body transference with Dr. Mixter and all that, and then it kind of goes to the AA, and then there's the GG stuff, or actually like the stuff in the hospital of just like finishing off that arc. So we are like just doing all these like mini finales in the finale, and then kind of getting to this part, and this is where, because you had Lexi's big moment, and that's when Tiffany goes upstairs to try to get the doll, and they kind of jump out and they start stabbing her.
Jake and Devon! Like, I was losing my mind. I've never seen them this proactive. And the fact that it's not a doll, that it's a woman that they're stabbing, like, it wasn't lost on me. Like, I was a little, wow, are they going to kill her? And then...
Better not.
What's behind door number 3?
Yeah.
We get a reveal.
Yeah.
That a little girl is in league with Tiffany, a little full-blown psycho named Carol.
Hold on a second, because
what?
I don't get the impression that she's in league with Tiffany. I get the impression that, like you said, that the Belle doll has always been Chucky, and it was whispering things to her and gaslighting her into doing all this. Because when Caroline steps out of the room and she has the knife, and then Tiffany just takes it from her, because Tiffany's there, Tiffany has no fucking idea what's going on, and you can see it in Jennifer's face. She's doing the thing with her eyes. She's as shocked as everyone else is, and she takes the knife because like the Caroline basically hands it to her, and she doesn't even know what to do. She's literally holding the knife to the child's neck while the child, Caroline is like literally expositing to Lexi, Jake, and Devon that she's the whole story about just like, that woman downstairs was not my mother. My real mother is Tiffany like basically saying that. And the look on Tiffany's face is just like she's just, really? Like, okay, I'll just go. It goes back to the idea of villains failing upwards, because she went there to get a Belle doll and she got it, but it just like the whole scenario did not work out how she expected it would, but it still worked out for her, and she'll take the win because she was unsure. She literally had that knife under the girl's neck. So I don't think that she was in league with her.
Okay, in league was the wrong terminology, meaning that she is on the side of the Tiffany side of the room, and not the side of the Lexi, Devon Evans, and Jake Wheeler side of the room. Like, that's what I didn't mean Tiffany was the mastermind of the whole thing or anything like that. I just mean she's like, no, I've chosen my side, and this is what I choose to protect. And at this juncture, that's another thing I loved about this particular episode, much like the rest of the season, but really with this episode, because we've already got the traditional finale where things seem to be kind of tied up, except there's a door open left for like another season to happen. We know it's not going to get all resolved in this episode. In fact, even more doors are opening. So it's just like, well, what other doors are we going to open right now? I have no idea what's going to happen next, because then they escape. And then all of a sudden, Miss Fairchild is back, and I'm left realizing, I realized it today. I didn't realize it when I was watching the episode, but I realized it today while I was re-listening to our first pod, just to kind of like see, was there anything we addressed that I want to address here? What you asked me at the end of that pod, if there's anything that's handled in season 2, what would I like it to be? And I answered one thing. I want to know, there were 2 things. I wanted to know, what is Miss Fairchild's deal? Like, we're alluding to this violent past of hers. How is it going to figure? And I didn't need her to be Glenda or anything like that. But just, why is it an issue? Why was it brought up? Because it's brought up like it's supposed to be important later. And I hope in season 3 it gets addressed. Another thing that didn't get addressed was that I really was curious about. I want to know, what is the connection of Chucky and Tiffany to at least Logan and was Lucas the other one, the brother? The fathers, the twin, Devon Sawa's twin characters in the season 1. Like, why do they have a history? Why does Chucky know who they are? And why does Tiffany know who they are? And we didn't find that out either. So I'm wondering if, again, you're talking about things being introduced and not paid off later.
I'll have to go back because I don't remember there being established a connection with them at all.
Oh, because she goes over to the funeral, remember? And she kisses him to pay her respects for his wife being lost, and she calls him by his first name like she knows him. She says something, I don't remember what line
probably read it in the
says.
paper. It's basically the same thing of her looking at Instagram stories and knowing that there was the Belle doll on display as the baby Jesus.
No, but she alluded to something about, like, you were all, I don't remember what the line is, but she says something like, you boys always blah blah blah, and Chucky says something about it later about how they were always the loser twins or something like that. And he's not just, he doesn't say it in a way where he's just alluding to the fact that they're bad fathers. He talks about it like he knows them. And but yeah, you need to see
you watched it more recently than I do. I don't remember that specifically. All I remember is like her coming in there because she wasn't supposed to kiss him. Like Jennifer Tilly said in an interview that she's just like, she was in the moment and she just did it and they went with it.
Right.
Like that whole thing. That's
but
just
it wasn't
high
just
camp.
the kiss. She
went in there dressed in her black with the veil. It's just like she's in mourning. Like it was ridiculous. I saw that as just like, it doesn't need to make any sense. It's more of that batshit crazy stuff. But
no, but he knew who she was. That's the thing.
Well, yeah, like, she's Jennifer Tilly. They all know who Jennifer Tilly is.
No, but he like they
knew it was Tiffany. Yeah. Okay, I don't know.
They knew each other because Jennifer Tilly, newsflash, just happens to look exactly like Tiffany Valentine.
Oh, that was another thing I wanted to say because that was the continuity hiccup that was kind of introduced in season. We might have talked about this in season 1 of just fact that
about Bride of Chucky being a movie.
Yeah, that like. Yeah. Why is that like such a stretch for people to believe? But I guess they kind of did allude to like, oh, it's Jennifer Tilly, but they said from Bride of Chucky, but wasn't the movie called Chucky Goes Psycho or something? Honestly, you know what? At this point, I don't even care. But let it do whatever it wants to do. But yeah, I mean, because the Miss Fairchild. That was a character that was missing this year. Like I wanted to see her. Like the end of the season off. So if they're gonna do like the same fucking thing with like Andy in season 3, where it's just like there's gonna be a setup for like whatever they're planning to do in the first episode, and then she's just taken out, or even if she's taken out or just taken out for a few episodes, like that would really piss me off. Like I want that actress. Looking up the name, Annie Briggs. I want her to be a main character, like main star, main billing. She needs to be there. I'm interested in her character. I want her to be involved in the season and actually have a pivotal role. I don't want her to just like be this Deus Ex Machina like every other fucking character. That's what this season was. It was just every single thing that came in was a Deus Ex Machina.
Well, if it didn't do, I had no idea as to its reception. So if there wasn't as enthusiastic a reception to this season as there was to the first one, maybe Don Mancini will take a tip from that and write accordingly for season 3. But I didn't have a problem with her not occupying more space in season 2 simply because She was only going to have, you know, like at least Jake and I don't remember. Did she have all? No, she didn't have all of them in her stead.
Well, she would have had Lexi.
Because Lexi was be with her mother.
Yeah.
But did she have Devon and Jake? I don't even remember. But somebody was supposed to be staying with her and everything like that. But she wasn't going to be like their foster parent. They were probably just going to stay with her until they got their foster homes. And then in the beginning of season 2, they were in their foster.
But
homes.
it wasn't even a matter of her like taking up space. It was like being in there at all. Because I would classify this as like a cameo at this point.
Well, I hope she comes back. I do hope she comes back.
I mean, if she didn't, that would be like a huge fucking like what the hell.
Also, finding out that Gigi calls Nika once a week after everything that they've been through made me love Gigi even more, because I'm like, you get it. You know that your mom is still in the wrong because she kidnapped and tortured this poor woman. Yeah. And this woman was just doing what she thought was right, and she's going to go on doing what she thinks is right. Nika going to kill and torture Tiffany. I like that. While they're in
and I love that there's
Manhattan.
even like... Yeah, Times Square. Yeah. What is the wig that she's wearing? Is this a reference to something?
I not that I could. I mean, I look at it and I get Angelica Houston in The Witches, but I don't think that was intentional.
No.
It was just bangs, bang. Like I don't know it, because it wasn't like anything that Jennifer Tilly had in Bound. I don't think, but I haven't seen.
No, not a lot of Jennifer Tilly reference, but
yeah,
and there's even this like understanding between like it's like between Nika and Tiffany, where she's just like, yeah, you know, like I'm sorry that things worked out the way that they are, but you know, I am going to kill you, and I'm just giving you a head start. Why she would even give her the head start? This is the thing at this point, though. Like, you cannot kill Jennifer Tilly. Like, you can't kill Tiffany off in this series, and you cannot put her into the doll. And that's how I felt with this whole thing at the end of her trying to do the switch into the Belle doll, and then that backfiring, because obviously Chucky still occupies the soul. And I just sort of saw that as just like, you are stuck as Jennifer Tilly. And there's no, like, obviously the final moment is Chucky driving the knife into the screen, supposedly into Jennifer Tilly, and just like, obviously she's not dead. They're never going to kill off Jennifer Tilly, because they can't, because they've already killed Tiffany, the person, and unless they reveal that there's another Jennifer Tilly lookalike, and it'll never, like, at that point you're just fucking things up. You have to keep her as Jennifer Tilly. Like, that's because even like at the end when the police come into Lexi's home and they're just like, who is the perpetrator? And they're just like, they take out their phone and just like, it was Jennifer Tilly. And they're like, what does he say? He's just like, oh, I think she's overrated. But
right. I always thought she was overrated. Yeah. But you know what? What would be funny though is if the first introduction we get back to Jennifer Tilly, to Tiffany in Jennifer Tilly's body, is she's trapped in a cage and she's got a little scar on her forehead because Chucky slashed at her. You know, a little motif for like, you know, the doll version of her.
But I want like a headband with like a blood stain on it, like, you know, like a fern mail. Right.
And then maybe she has amnesia because it's basically a soap opera now. But I was just bowled over by the end, because I thought she was going back into the doll. Yeah. And when she wasn't, and when there was like contacts in the doll's
oh my god,
and the wig comes off. And I mean,
well, no, but there was the thing. There was the thing. It was almost like, I'm sure there's like a reference to something else, but I was almost getting like The Craft. You know, when she, you know, puts her hand over her face and head, and like the hair turns blonde.
Yeah.
But it was just like the hands go over the face, and all of a sudden it's like Chucky. I love that. That was high camp. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think the fact that she couldn't transfer into the body, that just meant that she has to be Jennifer Tilly for the remainder of. I don't even bother
Don
to try
Mancini
anymore.
Got your note.
You know that like Tiffany is not as interesting in doll form. So
Don Mancini took the note, and he'll keep writing Jennifer Tilly on screen as Jennifer Tilly. No, because I think he realizes that. I think he understands that. Like, I mean, as much fun, and I think we've said this off pod before. Spoilers for Bride of Chucky, but I mean, just as much fun as Bride of Chucky is, when we lose Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany on screen, it starts to lose a little something.
Yeah,
you know, not
I
a
agree.
lot. It doesn't tank them. It doesn't tank the movie, but then when Seed comes and it's just like Jennifer Tilly, it's like keep it coming.
It's one of
I'm
the things
happy.
we might agree on because Bride is.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love all these movies. Bride is a little
Me
bit
too.
lower for me because of, like, great first half, but yeah. Anyway, before we wrap this up, is there something specific that you want to see in season 3?
I mean, aside from the things I've already mentioned, and it's the same things that I wanted to see before that I still haven't seen.
Yeah.
I want Catherine Hicks. I want Chris Sarandon.
Yeah.
If especially if it is the final season, that would feel. If we finish off this series, and this series is the finish to this saga, and we don't get Catherine Hicks or Chris Sarandon, at least in like something, I'll be like, oh, it would have been nice, Maybe I'll get something great.
Bring back
It'll still be like
the original.
the originals,
Final Girl,
the original
yeah.
originals. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and I
what I
mean,
would say.
like,
How about you?
but that's the thing, because it's just like, well, Andy would have to be there. So yeah, if Andy is going to be redeemed for all that, then yeah, I would like to see the mom come back at least. Like, I'm not as attached to Detective Mike as you are, but I think just basically we know that they're together because, at the end of Curse, it's established that they are married, I think. But I don't know. I can't really think. I think just like definitely have Miss Fairchild in there a lot more. I want to see a lot of Jennifer Tilly, obviously, and I want to see a lot of Nika. I think that Nika should also headline the season. This is another thing. Like, they're setting up this sort of like hunt between them. I want to see that play out through the entire, assuming it's going to be 8 episodes again. I don't want to just see like her come in like episode 4 and then sort of disappear again and show up again at like episode 8. Like, give their story some traction, because I don't think, at this point, I don't think that Jake and Devon and Lexi, especially if they continue the Jake and Devon shit that we've seen before, are strong enough characters to carry the series. I'm not saying that they're not great characters, because like they did really well in the first season, but just with the storylines that they've been given, at least in season 2, that's going to be a slog if we're just dealing with that shit. So like have multiple storylines. If you're really going down the soap opera route that Don Mancini, really seems to be drawn to, then fully embrace it. Soap operas have these reoccurring storylines that will just run concurrently through the entire season. Just do that. Right. Have all these different characters. Have your Nika, have your Jennifer, have the kids and Miss Fairchild, whatever it is, and
develop them.
Yeah,
like take them somewhere,
and bring back the like cameos by if you want to bring in the OGs, that's for sure. And
what if we get Jesse and Jade?
I was just gonna say. I mean, I don't really. I don't have like anything one way or the other for Katherine Heigl to come. I mean, if she came back, like that's fine. But I would like to see him for sure. I don't know what he's been up to, but
Me neither, yeah.
Oh, even though they were like one of the worst final couples, but I'll deal with him, on screen. That would be fine. I don't know about anyone else. Yeah.
Everybody else is dead.
It's true. Yeah.
Well, maybe Silver. Is it Silver from Child's Play 3?
Oh, De Silva.
De Silva.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if Andy's there, I mean, it's gonna get crowded, but they could definitely bring her in. I'd like to see more, and this is something that actually I felt was missing, because what I really loved in season 1 was sort of like the flashbacks to like Charles Lee Ray's life. I think that's what made season 1 so rich for me, because it was developing the mythology of the show, and it added bonus that we got to see Fiona Dorff playing him, but also even when we saw like young boy Chucky and even like the teenager in the home, like all of that was interesting. And then
Peter
like
Pan stuff,
and then like knowing that like Eddie Caputo was his roommate and just like doing stuff like that, like anything that like enriches the canon of Child's Play, like that's perfect. I'd love to see more of that. Like show us more things that we thought we knew but we didn't. Like that's perfect. So Scream 3 the shit out of Chucky season 3.
Roman.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
I mean, there's so many that we can mention. I feel like almost so many characters were cherries on top, but it's Tiffany.
Yeah.
How could it be anyone else?
I mean, I think Gigi gets a shout out for sure, and Nika.
Yeah.
But I mean, that 4th episode, it not only saved the season, considering where I felt like things were going, it gave me life. It was some of the most enjoyable moments in television viewing I have had in many, many years. Like, so, and it's all because of her. It's all because of Tiff.
Totally.
So yeah,
all
there
right.
you go.
Perfect. I'm cool with that. So, last week on the cherry picker, we asked you who deserves to die the most in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. I nominated Ken Walsh. You nominated Coach Schneider across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. The vote was 215 for Ken versus 728 for Coach.
Oh my God. Thanks, guys.
I never suspected that would happen.
No, the sheer number. It's like, wow, that's a lot of people. Cool.
Let's read the comments. Movie Maniac 03. I'm going with the Coach. He was very creepy character. Glad Freddy got him, but I think Jesse's dad is a part of the best parents in horror movie history. They actually cared about their kid.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Elliot
Best?
from Orlando. Wow. The Coach. I've had coaches like him, and let's just say it really messed up my thinking on exercise and health, which is why I was so overweight for so much of my life. Though I'm down 80 pounds now, a bad coach can really mess kids up, and he evokes a lot of bad memories, so he definitely gets the cherry picker for me.
Good for you, honey.
Yeah, good for you, Elliot, and thank you for sharing that personal story. Blueberry. The dad is an icon, one of the most useless, uninvolved parents of the series, and that's saying a lot. I don't know if that's a vote for him or against him, though.
Yeah, right.
Amethyst Frost. These are two great picks. I'm voting for Schneider because being a pervert for his teen students means he's the deserving choice by default. But I also hate him because he's the type of total top daddy who would be using Grindr in 2023 and annoying everyone by sending unsolicited DMs trying to assert his dominance. Jesse's dad upheld the grand tradition of every Elm Street parent being the worst, except Alice's dad and Dream Child. In addition to pulling the tried and true horror trope of purchasing a murder house for a discount and not telling the family, Mr. Welsh sucks for blaming his tortured, sweaty son for one of the parakeets exploding in the living room. Freddy killed Schneider, and kudos for that, but I wish he burst Mr. Walsh into flames just like the bird.
only one issue I take with that. Not Alice's dad in Dream Child. You mean Alice's dad in Dream Master. That's when he's at his worst. Anyway, sorry to correct
I'm
you,
just
but thank you for the vote.
Thanks for being the Virgo. I know. No, I know you're not correct.
I know the saga too well.
Thanks for being our resident Virgo, correcting everything.
Yeah.
I noticed you did the same thing to me last episode when I accidentally said A Nightmare on Elm Street when I meant Friday the 13th.
Well, yeah, because, I knew what you were saying, but I just wanted to make sure, people were like, wait, what are we talking about?
Just salivating, chomping at the bit, waiting for...
No!
You made a mistake!
No.
You think I am because you're a Scorpio. Go on.
Reveal my identity. Dylan Jameson, Mr. Walsh got my vote solely for constantly blaming Jesse for the happenings in the house. Example, the bird going rabbit and then bursting into flames. And Coach Schneider did die in the movie, whereas Mr. Walsh lived. That's a good strategy. Like, kill off the person who didn't die, you know? Then you get double death. Grant Dempsey, gotta say Coach on this one, but I'm curious. And are the human-faced dogs anthropomorphic in appearance enough to have been eligible for nomination per cherry picker rules? I mean, I think not, because they don't have an identity. They're part of like a...
They don't even have names.
Yeah.
They are on screen, but they have no lines.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything. They just stand there.
It's true, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Kira Wood, I'll go with the Coach for the creepy vibes he gives. Hamish, probably Coach, but I would choose Mrs. Walsh as she put the cover over the birdcage, even though, my God, it is hot as an oven in here. P.S. I have waited 63 episodes to finally say that. I feel like Hamish was so let down. He was just like, someone please pick that bitch for putting the hot blanket that's just going to like compress the hot air in that cage. That's why the fucking bird exploded, because it was overheated.
It's her fault.
Yeah.
She's the cherry bomb.
New category. Sean P. I vote for the Coach because he gives off super pervy vibes. I'm still very disappointed that I didn't pick up on how gay the film was until the bar scene. Wish more films, especially horror, would embrace their gay side. This film deserves more credit.
too.
Love the pod. Thank you, Sean.
Oh, thank you.
Ashton Gordon, Coach for sure. You punished them with push-ups, but they weren't even doing them right. In my poltergeist voice, they weren't even doing it right in my poltergeist voice.
In my poltergeist voice, like...
They weren't... Is that a
You
line?
moved the headstones!
Oh, that was like, you weren't doing them right! How can you... How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? Which I don't even think that's the same voice,
What?
but
Wow, and but always to the East Coast we go. To the
East Coast.
of Haddonfield,
I think
Haddonfield,
where was
Illinois.
I? Why was I born on the East Coast and I don't know it?
I mean, you know, you're East.
Strifen 19. Strifen 9. Yeah, I'm voting for the Coach because God only knows what he was going to do to Jesse after he had tired him out. My chunky Geordie, I despise PE coaches. I had one in high school that used to walk into our girls' changing room, perving on us. Off topic, if you ever do a Halloween 5 cherry picker, Jamie's nurse needs to be cherry on top. Coach from Freddy's Revenge needs to be cherry under the foot.
Oh.
What were you gonna say about the Jamie's nurse? Nurse Patsy? You save it for the Halloween 5 episode?
I'll save it for the pod.
Yeah.
We'll get there, folks. You'll hear it.
Kayla Hollingsworth, Coach, because you can't be a disciplinary in your leather daddy fit. Thomas Baker, Coach. Mendejo, leather daddy Coach, has got to get the axe. How dare he do that to a baby gay? Derek Covey, Coach. Aww. Rob K, Coach. He was also a jerk to his son, Gordy, and Stand By Me. Blue Box 87,
right.
Coach for being a bully to the gay kid instead of an ally. And Silent Saturn, since the conversation is all about subtext, I don't want to vote for the Coach because he clearly represents the gay thread that corrupts our youth and needs eradicating. F that. On that level, I totally vote for Lisa, the cure, the right kind of girl every gay guy just hasn't met yet. F that too. As it is said, I also don't really have an issue with the dad to vote for him in good conscience either. I might have to sit this one out.
Okay, Lisa. Wow.
Lisa.
I mean, I stand by my own headcanon that they are not together, that they are the Will and Grace of the horror genre. It's just a matter of time. She's waiting it out. She's waiting him out, you know?
Okay. Anyway, good sir, you have the floor.
Wow. I do have to say before we move on, like that other thing about like Lord knows what, that one comment, like Lord knows what that coach was going to do after he wore him out. I've oftentimes kind of like not let myself start to wonder like, what was the game plan after Jesse got out of the shower? Like he has him run laps and then he sends him to the shower and like, then what? I don't know. And I don't like thinking about it. Anyway, I thought I knew from the beginning. I already kind of alluded to this earlier. I thought it was really going to be Father Bryce for most of the season. And then he got fucking interesting. And it doesn't undo any of the bad things he did, but knowing where he came from and knowing that he really, with the performance that Devon gave, like seemed to really understand the damage he did. Like I said, it doesn't absolve him. I don't think he's a good person, but I think he's a person. And it's harder to kill a person than it is to kill a noise.
Okay, you know what? You were ready to kill Tree's mom for the fucking cake thing, so don't give me...
Well, because I hate that. That's inexcusable. People have broken noses and gone unconscious, and that's the worst thing to do to someone on your birthday. So, see, I have.
It was her birthday, too.
Yeah, see, fuck her. She's like, on my birthday, I'm going to break my daughter's nose. Fuck you, Mom. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. See, I'm still angry about that. I'm angrier about that than I am about everything Father Bryce did that was wrong in season 2
I don't
of
believe
Chucky.
that for a second. Who are you nominating?
By the end of this season, it was clear who I was pissed off the most at, and that person is Dr. Mixter. Because we find that this person has been in her own head, like orchestrating and mentoring, I guess, and creating a platform for this youth to, flex his muscles and to get in touch with his darkness or whatever the bullshit she was, proselytizing about toward the end of the season. She's duplicitous. She's unprofessional. She gives therapy a bad name, which is all a trend all the time in any genre of movie or television series. So many therapists suck, and she's just one more to add to the pile. But then on top of that, I think the thing that pissed me off the most about her was that she was the only one who didn't get covered in blood when Father Bryce exploded. Everybody else, like even poor Nika, got the blood in her mouth and she didn't even know what she was getting in her mouth. And everybody's coated and she got like one fleck. Dr. Mixter got one fleck on her fucking collar and she looked at it like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, fuck you. Get out here and get covered in blood like everybody else. You deserve it more than anyone else. And so when she died, I found out that she died in the Chucky thing, I was happy, Old Testament happy. Fuck you, woman, just giving women in the therapy, and female therapists, giving them a bad name, ushering forth, homicidal boys into men. Fuck you. Toward what? To what end? What were you getting out of this? Fuck you. I hate her. So that's what I have to say. How about you, Zach?
Well, since you just ate up so much time with that, I'm going to say Trevor. So vote your heart, vote your conscience.
No case made.
Yeah. We don't have time.
Trevor Kane.
Trevor Kane, is that his name?
For anyone wondering.
Trevor Kane. So you can vote your heart, vote your conscience. The poll will be open on Patreon to all Patreon supporters. You can also vote on Instagram. That is our Instagram account at the Cherry Picker Pod, so follow us there. And you can also vote on YouTube under the community section. So subscribe to us on the Cherry Picker as well. And if you would like to become a patron, you get to have early access to all of these episodes. If you are supporting on the Freddy Krueger tier, you will get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark. It's our monthly special. This month it is going to be Scream Survivor 2, where we basically do a season of Survivor, but with characters from Scream. We already did it once. It's really fun, and you're not going to want to miss that. The first season preview is also on the YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And I also do want to welcome some new Patreon supporters. So welcome to Tom Saunders, Yvette Lecheminant, and Mason Tomlinson.
Yay! Welcome.
I hope I said the Lecheminant right.
Yeah.
Just doing the Chucky voice. Tom Saunders, Yvette Lecheminant, and Mason Tomlinson. And I also want to thank Andre Felix for editing this fucking podcast.
Fuck you very much.
Previously on fucking Chucky. that was another great line. But yes, if you do want to support, it is my Patreon. So Zach Cherry, ZackCherry. Edward, where can they find you on Soch?
There's no time. What about you, Zach Cherry?
Main YouTube channel, Zach Cherry. Instagram, Retro Bitch Face. And fuck Twitter. I'm on Letterboxd as well, Zach Cherry. And Edward is Truth is his handles everywhere since he didn't want to say it. So what do we got? Oh, you don't know what we've got going on next week.
No,
it's a Wes
really
Craven.
don't.
It's a Wes Craven movie. We're doing Wes Craven. It takes place on a jet, on an airplane.
Oh!
Yeah.
We're doing Red Eye.
We're doing Red Eye.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen that since the theater.
Since the theater. So,
The theater.
So thank you for... Oh, also, yeah, if you are new to the Cherry Picker, you can watch these episodes on YouTube, obviously. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can listen. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. And you can hear us on all major podcast platforms. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be right back.